When did Love to Nurture get started? Love to Nurture actually got started because I was working with adolescents and children in a treatment center that was specialized and worked with the toughest kids in the nation. This was a treatment center which was based out of the Westminster area, and we had a bunch of adolescents and kids, and our reputation was if you have hit bottom and you have nowhere to put your kid because they've been to every treatment center that you have, then we need to send them to our center. And so we had kids from all over the country. We had kids from Philadelphia, from Indiana, from Gary, Indiana, from the streets of Philadelphia, Philadelphia probation. We had kids from Hawaii, out of the city, streets of Honolulu, the Alaskan Youth Initiative. We had gang kids out of Indian reservations, which is a very interesting population to work with. And our reputation, again, was we're going to take the toughest kids. Well, I moved from the facility up in Westminster down to Colorado Springs, and we had to open a new center down here. And we opened it on the Myron Stratton campus, and we were going to open up overnight a program that was going to work with, see, our residential unit was 78 kids of all ages and sexes. Our hospital was 17 adolescents and 12 children, and then we're going to have 50 kids in day treatment, as well as a physician clinic. Now here's the catch. I was given the assignment to come down here and get this facility up to speed, to hire the staff and have the kids in it. And because of finances, we couldn't move them in slowly. We had to have the kids all in there almost immediately. So in 30 days, I was going to bring in that number of kids. About 150 kids were going to arrive overnight from the worst places in the country, okay? And they were slated to come in. Now, I have no staff. So I have to go out and hire a bunch of people in their 20s who maybe have never worked with kids before, who are going to come in and work with kids who are really, really tough. And what we knew was the program we were running in Westminster wasn't getting the job done. It was really really not much of a program at all. And so we had to come up with something new. And the trick was, it's got to be new, it's got to be super effective, and it's got to train staff to do it in a very short amount of time. So that was the toughest job I could imagine. And because of that, I hired the smartest psychologists I knew. My father was a psychologist. He was a behavioral psychologist in the field of social psychology. His name was Jack Wright. And he had done his work underneath a couple of psychologists, at the time the 3 top psychologists in the country. One of them was O.J. Harvey. O.J. Harvey just recently passed away. He was the head of the Department of Psychology, University of Colorado. Very prestigious department up there, and he was the head. Marvin Shaw, head of the University of Florida, where he was the chair of that department and wrote some of the really interesting articles that you'll find out there on what's called groupthink. He did a huge article on the explosion of the Challenger, which was based on the concept of groupthink. You guys know what groupthink is? Very interesting thing. It's a way in which a group gets thinking something and that becomes reality to them, and anything that challenges that reality is seen as heresy, and they reject it. And so what had happened was, if you ever watch the takeoff, the liftoff of a spaceship, you know how they do T-minus 30, T-minus 29, they do all this stuff. Well, the reason they're doing that is because when we launched the first rockets that landed on the moon, there's as many as 300,000 people that were involved in the launching of that rocket. So you had subcontractors in plants all over the United States that were monitoring different systems, their systems. And at any moment, any one of them can push that button and stop the launch. So they all have to agree as it counts down to it going. Well, the group that built the O-rings, remember the O-rings? Knew for an absolute fact that the O-rings would be, and their word was, a concrete donut. They would not be supple and they would not work at temperatures below a certain degree. They knew that. And they're about to launch the Challenger at a temperature that was below that degree. So they knew it would blow up. They knew it would fail. So why on earth would they allow that ship to take off? And what Marv Shaw discovered was the system of the process of what's called groupthink. And that is, you get so caught up in the whole group believes in something that you can actually deny what is obvious reality that you're an expert and know about. This process is also what fuels gangs and cults. Remember the Hale-Bopp comet? Comet comes by and we find these people that have all died and they have dimes because they're going to get on the Hale-Bopp comet. This kind of thought is what they call groupthink. So Marv Shaw was one of the people that pioneered the concept of groupthink. The other one was Vince Campbell out of the University of Minnesota. These were the three top psychologists in the nation. They'd worked with my father, and they'd actually worked on, and if you're interested in an interesting experiment, look up Robbers Cave. Okay? Robbers Cave is a very interesting psychological experiment. If you look at the top 10 psychological experiments of all time, Robbers Cave is one of them. And in that experiment, what they do is they take two groups of kids that go off to summer camp and create stereotypes about each other, causing them to hate each other and fight. And then they do what's called creating some sort of shared goals, what they call superordinate goal theory, to dissolve that hate and fight and work together and get rid of stereotypes. So they showed how stereotypes can be created and dissolved. A very interesting experiment. My father was involved in that with these three. So I went to these three and said, guys, I need help. I have to design a program that will work with the toughest kids in the nation. These are kids who have killed people. These are kids who, one of them, my favorite kid, her name was Dana. She has a different name in the book, but her job to get into the gang in Lake County, Indiana, was that she had to take a gun into a park where a theater was going on and shoot someone point blank in the chest, and she did. And she didn't kill him, but she thought she did. Her job was to do that, plus she had to be consent to sex with every single member of the gang, male and female. Those are the two things she had to do to get into the gang. She did both. She, at this point, had sworn her allegiance to nothing but the G, the gang. And so these were the kinds of kids that were coming into our program. And so I had to have a staff that could handle them, and they could learn the program in 7 days, because that's how much time I had to train. So I brought this group of behavioral psychologists in, and we did a ton of work, and we came up with Love to Nurture. We actually gave it a different title because we're a treatment center. I think we called it the very fancy name of Partnership and Treatment. I'm really glad we changed the name. But that program was designed for that reason, and it not only worked, it worked phenomenally. It was working on different principles than you see today. Most of the stuff that you see modern day has to do with natural consequences and setting up what are called social learning programs, mostly built around consequencing kids for negative behavior and rewarding them for good behavior, which is a part of Love to Nurture, but it's a very small part. The main concept behind Love to Nurture is using what we call paradoxical interventions, empowering kids instead of overpowering them, and some things that we're going to talk about later on in this discussion. So we developed this program, and we were shocked. It worked better than anything that we had ever seen. That very girl that I mentioned, Dana, 6 months later was standing on a stage very much like the one I'm standing on right now, and she was singing Amazing Grace at a talent show, wearing a really pretty dress that her mom had sent her, and she was still she was still swearing her allegiance to the G, but the G was no longer the gang. It was God. And she had become a Christian. Her mother was in tears. This kid had made a total transformation in 6 months. And that transformation was primarily due to the treatment program that we had created. In fact, at that point in time, she wrote a letter to the guy that was over, she called him the man over Lake County, so the guy that was in charge of Lake County. I still have the copy of that letter, and it was in the book that I wrote. And it was a letter saying thank you for rescuing me and my family by sending us to this program. So when I left that program, I was so impressed with it that I left with the rights to have that program anywhere I wanted to go. And so I brought it to Hope and Home. And we said, you know, we need to have a parenting program because we're going to do some of the same things. We're going to take really tough kids into Hope and Home. The medical director at the treatment center I was at was the guy, George Cresswell, who founded this organization. Remember how I told you guys in the launch that our first kid was a 7-year-old girl named Daphne? You guys remember that? And how she'd been deemed unadoptable, and that was the one that the judge had said we're gonna adopt here at Hope and Home, and gave her to one of our families. If you ever see her, say hi. She works here now. It's one of my favorite things. She was adopted at age 7. She came back to us at age 18. She's had several sets of foster parents through Hope at Home, and now she's a full-time employee up in our CIS department. That's our Clinical Information Systems. So it's really kind of neat for us to have gone full circle with Daphne. She just had her baby. She's married to Rob, a great guy in the military here. So it's kind of neat to have that. There's no importance to that other than just allowed to tell the story. So that is why we adopted Love to Nurture. And what I can tell you is it has become an incredibly powerful and successful model. It's now distributed through B&H Publishing. B&H Publishing is our publisher. They were bought out by Lifeway. And so you can buy it in stores in 163 different countries. I have gotten letters from all over the United States and some from outside the United States from people that tell me, that they're so glad they have this system. Their Department of Human Services uses it, their treatment center uses it. I get phone calls from just regular parents saying, boy, I wish my parents had this. Do we have a problem with the audio? No, we're good? Okay. And so I guarantee you something. There's a couple things I love about it. The thing I guarantee you, if it will work with some of the toughest kids in the nation, it will work with your 3-year-old. I'll say that again because it's supposed to be funny. If it will work with the toughest kids in the nation, it will work with your 3-year-old. Now, what's interesting about that is Hope and Home, once you become a foster parent, if a child is not working out in your home, you do have the option of talking to your home supervisor, and after you've tried everything, you can give us your 30-day notice, and we will remove that child. If it's an emergency, we'll move faster than that. If it's not, we'll try and get the best home within 30 days. DHS is the one that actually has to move the child. They're the ones that have in our contract the 30-day notice, which is why it's in yours. Guess what the age range is that we get the most 30-day notices at? 3. 3-year-olds kick the butts of our foster parents more than any other age. We get almost none, almost 0, 12 and up. So after you got a chance to meet Brogan, you can probably imagine why. Brian, you seem surprised.
I do.
It's because
I have a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's no angel, but
Well, yet.
and I can see that there's less reasoning at that age, and so perhaps it's trickier to know what to do.
Right, there's less reasoning. And the other thing is, he started out in your stomach, right?
Right.
Yeah. He's what some of our kids call a tummy baby. It's really funny. The Woods have Mason, and they're trying to explain to Mason what's a tummy baby, because he's asking when everybody's adoption dates. So he's just now starting to understand that not everybody's adopted, that some people are called tummy babies and some are adopted babies. But the advantage of it being a tummy baby is you fell in love with that child before they were born. And so there's that mother-child bonding that gets you through the really, really tough times when they just don't sleep at all and you're up all night. And the world doesn't really give you an option. There's really not this 30-day option when you're a mom. And so that's part of it, to be absolutely honest. When you don't have a choice, it makes it easier on some level because it's just not something you entertain. But yes, our number one age for turning kids, I don't want to say turning them in, but for giving you 30 days notice is 3 years old. And then 4 and 5 come soon after that, and babies are after that. Teenagers are last. But I mean what I said, and that is our training program will work with all ages. I absolutely guarantee it. One of the things I also like about Love to Nurture, and I mentioned this a little bit to you guys earlier, is it does not replace what you're already doing. I find those programs to be insulting. When I look at a parenting book and it basically says, I'm the expert, I know how to raise kids, and you need to stop doing what you're doing and do what I'm telling you to do, I would tell you to take most of those books and throw them in the garbage, or read them and just take a few good nuggets out of them. But to me, that's an insulting thing to say to somebody. You don't know what you're doing, I do, so do what I tell you to do. Love to Nurture is designed to come alongside whatever program that you have, and it works. So I've worked with parents with all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different ways of thinking about kids, and the program comes alongside that, and at very least helps you to understand what you're doing and how effective or ineffective it is, and at most gives you some ways to think differently about how you raise your kids. Okay, what is love to nurture? If you go to a bookstore, you'll see hundreds of books on parenting. And obviously they're separated by alphabet. So you have the authors A through Z. But if they weren't, if they were separated by how they think about children and families, I would say they'd be separated into two separate groups. One bookcase would be about kids who have problems and how you can solve those problems. Isn't that the typical parenting book? Have a new kid in 7 days, how to get a kid to mind without you losing yours, you know, all this kind of correction and discipline. And basically it says, you must be having a problem or you wouldn't be here. So let's tell you how to raise kids right. You must have done something wrong. Or there must be something wrong with your child. And so it's all about fixing broken kids. Did you guys get pizza?
Yes.
Okay, make sure you get some while we're doing this. Don't hesitate. The other bookshelf is not about how to fix broken kids. It's about how to raise great kids. Okay? So we have one bookcase that's all about broken kids, and you must have either broken them yourself or somehow they're messed up, and we're going to tell you how to fix them. The other one's about how to fix, or excuse me, the other bookcase, the one I like, is about just how to raise great kids. Love to Nurture is about how to raise great kids. It's not about how to fix broken kids. And one of the things that you'll learn is if you get out of the mindset of you're broken and I want to fix you, and get into the mindset of you're a kid who wants to grow up and be a great adult. Everybody does. Let's help you get there. And what we know as Christians is that control is really an illusion. We don't really control other people. We don't always necessarily control ourselves, okay? And so control is a bit of an illusion. So the idea that I have power over you, I'm going to change you, I'm going to make you the way I want you to be, that's an illusion. What we find, though, is if we raise great kids, they control themselves. And guess what? When they turn 18, we're out of the picture anyway. So don't we want to have kids that learn that sense of self-control? Don't we want to have what we call self-correcting kids? What is the purpose of parenting? Oh, by the way, if you have one of these, I think I just answered number 4. What's the purpose of parenting? Yeah, it's raising great kids. All right, what else? What's the purpose of parenting?
Able to have appropriate boundaries and succeed on their own or ask for help when needed.
Okay, you said 3 things, and they're all right. Say those 3 things again.
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
Succeed on their own and ask for help.
Succeed on their own and ask for help. What's the difference between the last 2? Succeed on their own or ask for help? Succeed on their own and ask for help? What do you...
I think that to succeed on your own, sometimes you need to ask for help.
Okay. This is an area where we fight a lot with the Department of Human Services. We love DHS. I don't want to sound like we're against them or they're against us. We just see things differently. We have a different world than they have. They have a program called Teen Self-Sufficiency, okay? Because if we're going to raise teens that are going to emancipate out of the system, we want to have teen self-sufficiency. Makes sense, right? Where we disagree is what you just said. I don't expect anyone to be self-sufficient. I'm not self-sufficient. I don't expect my 18-year-old to be self-sufficient. I have 2 kids, one's 30, one's 25. The 30-year-old just called me and said, Dad, I need some help growing up. She wanted to sell her car, and she didn't understand how do I get a title if I still owe money on the car? She was like, how does this work? I need to sell this car because I want to get rid of it, but I can't pay off the title until I have money, but no one's going to buy it from me unless I have the title. Help. So I don't expect my 30-year-old to know the answer to that. How many people in this room know the answer to that? That's what I thought. I didn't know the answer to that either. I'm like, I don't know. I've never done that. But I have a 30-year-old and a 25-year-old, and the 30-year-old's just now emancipating, and the 25-year-old is getting there. But she certainly wasn't emancipated at 18. And I think for us to assume that a foster child, without the benefits of a family like mine and the resources and the classes and all that my child had, to assume that that child's going to emancipate at 15 and become self-sufficient, I think it's ridiculous. So we don't teach self-sufficiency at Hope and Home. And this challenges DHS a little bit because I think we should talk more about self-sufficiency. We talk about being, guess, what do you think the word is that we use? We don't use that, but it's a good word. Yeah. What we want our kids to be is interdependent. Okay? There's an interdependency that we want our kids to be. And so, for example, a self-sufficiency class that has a kid in some sort of a training program, like we use Jericho Java for training. In a self-sufficiency class, you're really mad at your supervisor. And so what do they teach you to do? Well, take a break and count to 10 and do things like that. Those are good self-sufficiency plans. What do I tell kids to do in that situation? Call your mom. Mom, I'm really angry at my boss. I want to yell at him. What should I do? That's being interdependent. Okay? And that's what we teach, is interdependence. But what does it require? You got to have a mom. And again, that's where we look at the world a little different than DHS does. They create self-sufficiency programs for kids aging out of the system. We don't age kids out of the system. So we've said over and over and over, our plan for kids going out of the system is called having a mom and a dad. So you have to have a mom and a dad to be fair. If you're not going to have one, then I think independence makes sense. But you're right. We want to create interdependent kids. Kids that are interdependent are more successful when they become adults. For those of you online, one of my favorite things about Alamosa in the San Luis Valley is the level of interdependence that valley has. There's 50,000 people that live in the valley. And they, from what I can tell, they all live about 40 miles away from each other. Okay? And so they are a very tight-knit group of people online and in community because they have to be. And so there's this interdependence amongst them. Interdependence within small groups is what makes them strong. That's why Hope and Home has the systems that we have. We have our small groups that we call support groups. We have our launch groups. The summer, you're going to all learn about Summer O Fun. They're the activities that we do. We don't do those just because, hey, it's fun to have activities, but because we want to build that sense of interdependence. So, great answer. Tell me other reasons, other things about what do we want to do? How do we raise good kids? What do we want them to do? What do we want? What's the secret of parenting? What's the point of parenting? You don't have to be shy. Shout them right out. What are some of the other things you guys know? What are the things that you want as a parent for your kids? To know they're loved. You're doing really good, and you weren't even in the launch. Rand, we're gonna move you up here soon. You want kids to know they're loved, right? What else?
That they're safe.
They're safe. What do you want for their lives?
Be successful.
You want to be successful. What's defined as success? We'll be talking about this more. What's successful?
Whatever they think successful is. Having
Sure.
within.
Yeah, it's going to be defined by the user. But what would you like? You want them to find someone else? You want them to have a family if they want one? You want them to have a good job if they want one? You want them to get good education? I mean, these are usually the things that we say. I want my kid to grow up and be happy. I want them to be content. I want them to stay out of jail. I want them to not have a lot of frustrations that maybe I had. I want them to know that I love them. I want them to feel supported. I want them to be successful as they would define it. This is typically what we talk about, is these are the things that we want kids to do. Do you recognize the difference in a parenting philosophy that starts here versus a parenting philosophy that starts with, I don't want them to make noise. I don't want them to get in trouble. I don't want them to annoy me. I don't want this problem. I don't want this problem. I want these things. Whoa. In one case, we're targeting a future for a kid. In another case, we're talking about the things that annoy us. So, we have a couple of choices here. We can raise perfect kids, and when they become adults, they say, I was a perfect kid, or at least my parents thought I was, and now there's a reason I live 2,000 miles away from them. A lot of people laugh when I say it because I could probably go through this room and some portion of this room would say, that's me. I do love my parents. I know they tried. It was a different world then, but there's a reason I live over 1,000 miles away from them. Right? Okay. Yeah. So,
To a T.
There you-
Actually, I moved 3,000 miles away.
there's a reason.
And I moved back to 1,500.
Or we can have kids say the following. I wasn't perfect, neither were they. But I know that I'm loved. They did the best job they could. They did a really good job for preparing me. I'm mostly happy with where I'm going. And I just really love them and I want them in my life. Which one do we want? That first child is what's called perfect child, wounded adult. And what we have to be aware of is being a high functioning adult does not necessarily, is that one on there? Okay. Number 6, perfect child, wounded adult. This is kind of fun, isn't it, with the little questions on there. Keep me on my toes. Keep me from wandering. One thing we don't want to confuse. High functioning does not mean healthy. There are a lot of high functioning people in this world who are not healthy. And they are severely damaged by the way they were raised. But they'll be the first one to say to you, I turned out all right. I have this job, I have that job, I'm very high functioning. You know, it's true, you probably are high functioning, but there are a lot of people who are high functioning, but they're not healthy people. We want to raise healthy kids. So that's the whole point behind Love to Nurture. Now let's get more into detail. Where does it fall on the spectrum of parenting? The spectrum of parenting starts out on one end, and that is what we call rigid authoritarian. On the other end, we have what's called permissive and indulgent. Okay? That's question 1. Rigid authoritarian. On the other end of the scale is permissive indulgent. And we all know these people, right? Rigid authoritarian. Because it's my house, you do what I say. You live under my roof, you do what I say. What's it?
My house, my rules.
My house, my rules. Slow obedience is no obedience. All that junk, okay? That's the rigid authoritarians. Over on the other side is the permissive indulgent. Permissive indulgent people are the ones who say things like, you know, my kid's going to drink anyway, so I might as well drink with her. My kid's going to smoke dope anyway, so I might as well do it with her. You know, my kid's going to stay out all night and sleep with people, so I ought to just let her do that. I mean, that's your permissive indulgence. I want to be my kid's friend. Okay? If they want something, I'm just going to give it to her because I don't want them. I want to be popular. I want to be the cool mom. Okay? That's permissive indulgent. In the middle is what we call authoritative. Hope and Home and Love to Nurture is an authoritative form of parenting. We're the parents. We're in charge. We're gonna have authority in this family. We have a role with you, and it's authoritative. We're not authoritarian. We're not permissive. Now, what's interesting about authoritarian and permissive is for some reason, if you were to imagine them as an island, okay, they can't see anything but the other island. Drives me crazy. So someone's sitting over here in the authoritarian, intolerant world, right? And you say, we want you to kind of lighten up a little bit. Give this kid some opportunities, you know. Don't be so controlling. Don't be so authoritarian. And you know what they say? Oh, so you want me to be like my ex-wife and give kids anything they want, whenever they want, and do all these things with it? You want me to be their best friend? You want me to drink and smoke with them? No. That's all they can see. Okay? Equally, I have talked with people who are permissive indulgent and said, I think you need some more rules. I think you need some more structure in your home. Oh, So you want me to be just like my dad, you know, and everything's by the rule and military, and take the belt off and spank me for anything I do wrong. For some reason, both of these groups are locked into having a very hard time seeing anything but each other. Okay? So our challenge is to try and see something else, and that's what's in the middle. It reminds me a little bit of modern day politics. For some reason, you go to CNN and all you see is like they're just furious. And then you go to Fox and it's like they don't see anybody. I guess the flyover states are where we are. But and if you know any friends that are kind of rabid in one way or the other, it's kind of wild. It's like, you know, you're either, you know, on this, it's as far over here as you can be or as far over here as you can be. It's like, what about the middle ground? That's where we live. And so the authoritative parent is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the class. Because what we want to see is an authoritative parent. And what we're going to show you is while both of these types of parenting in some ways work, obviously, we're having kids and they're surviving, they don't work real well in child welfare. And they don't work at all with kids who are traumatized, okay? One of the things that we're going to learn through this process is what it's like to work with traumatized kids. Now, Jackie gave you guys will get this in your next launch, but she gave you an introduction to working with traumatized kids. Trauma changes everything. I cannot tell you enough how trauma changes everything. And I have foster parents who will say to me, I know she's traumatized, but. Stop. Stop with I know she's traumatized. I know she's traumatized, but she should be able to still pick up her room. I know she's traumatized, but I know she should be able to get up in the morning and go to school. I know she's traumatized, but she should be able to sit at the kitchen table with us and eat dinner. Trauma changes everything. We had a young girl. She was living in Europe, and she was on an army base in the middle of Europe, and her father was the chaplain there, and he raped her on a regular basis, oftentimes relating scripture to her while he was having sex on top of her. She felt powerless. Imagine, she's not in the United States. She's on an army base in the middle of Europe, and her dad is the chaplain, and he hangs out with the general, and she sees him all the time in a position of extreme power. She has no power. What's she going to do? Escape? To get off the army base in the middle of Europe? She doesn't speak other languages. Where's she going? She's a kid. She's 12 years old. That girl has no power. How do you survive in a situation like that? Best you can. She became very passive-aggressive. She can't be aggressive-aggressive. She can't fight back, right? So, you're passive. I'm sick. That's one way to get out of being raped. You come up with all these excuses for things that you don't want to do because you don't have the courage for good reason to stand up to your oppressor. Eventually it came out. The guy was arrested. She came to the United States. Her mom was furious with her. Her mom knew what was going on, but she was upset because she ruined her meal ticket. Said goodbye. Have a nice life. This girl was truly abandoned. She had a real hard time getting up in the morning because she had nightmares all night long. So was she manipulative? Absolutely. And we've got to learn to take that word out of our dictionary. Manipulative means I'm doing things to somehow meet my needs. A baby cries because they don't know how to ask. A 12-year-old acts sick or feels sick. Why? Are they being manipulative? The word manipulation simply means I'm just doing things to meet my needs. Mostly because I don't have the verbal skills or I don't have the courage to kind of stand up to people and tell them what I want, why I want it, and how I should have it. So, again, I know she's been traumatized, but she should be able to get up and go to school, right? She went to school on a army base here in Colorado. That make any sense? No, she was triggered by army people, right? Of course she was. Once we started figuring things out, we figured out what was triggering the trauma, guess what? She became more successful. Trying to discipline her, disciplining trauma is like throwing gasoline on a fire to put it out. Please remember that. If it's not on there, it probably isn't. Disciplining trauma is like throwing gasoline on a fire trying to put it out. When you show up and talk to someone and say, I know she's traumatized, but she should be able to do this or that or the other thing. No. We have kids that hoard food. Yeah, guess why? Because they didn't get food. And so they're afraid they're not going to get food. So they hoard food. What do we do with those kids? We get them a dorm fridge. It's really simple. Don't fight this, go with it. Okay? Remember I said earlier on that we're going to do paradoxical interventions? That's what I'm talking about. Sometimes the way we work with something is the opposite of the way that you think you would. A kid hoards food. I knew one of our foster parents was in a prayer group with a woman who was a teacher of love and logic. And they were both foster parents. Ours was here. She was at Lutheran. He asked her, how do you think love and logic's going to do? She said, oh, I'm totally prepared. 6-year-old came into her home, lasted a week. She refused to eat. Again, you think, I know she's traumatized, but come on, she's got to eat. So she had natural consequences. You're going to sit at the table until you eat. I'm going to tell you a really smart hint here. Draw no lines in the sand that you don't want stepped over. Okay? The moment you draw a line in the sand, they step over it, and now what are you going to do? Okay? I never draw lines in the sand with anyone because I know whatever that line is, it's important to me, and they're going to step over it. So why would you set yourself up for that? So when you say things like you're not going to get away from the table until you eat, how late can you stay up? My guess is they can stay up later than you can. True story, I had a foster parent. Got into it with a kid. Kid came to her house for respite. The girl was really upset that she had to be in respite. Mom and her got into a big fight. The new foster mom. It's the first time she knew her. She wouldn't get off the phone with her boyfriend. This is when the phones were connected to the wall. Remember those days? You didn't get to take them with them in your pocket. She made her hang up the phone. They went to the restaurant. They get to the restaurant. This girl's really upset. Her name is Rose. And so she orders the most expensive thing on the menu. It comes, she says, I don't want it. She's just yanking the foster parent's chain, who then draws a line in the sand. If you don't eat it, that's it. We got no food at the house. It's this or nothing. Okay? The girl says, yeah, there is. I saw in the fridge you got ice cream. Yeah, you're not making a meal out of ice cream. Yeah, well, the ice cream's for something else. I don't care, I'll eat it. She says, you know, you're not eating the ice cream, okay? She says, I'll just wait till you guys fall asleep and I'll eat all the ice cream. What a ridiculous fight to get into, right? How often do we do these things? Way too often. So we've drawn a line in the sand. You're not going to eat the ice cream. I'm going to stop you. So she gets home. The mom gets home. And the next day she comes and tells me how she won that fight. What she did is she went in the backyard. She got a lawn chair. She brought the lawn chair in and laid it sideways against the front of the refrigerator so you couldn't open it. And she spent the night there. She won. I said, where did Rose sleep? In her bed. Okay. She's got covers and sheets. Yeah. It's got like a mattress. Yeah. Yeah. You slept the night on a lawn chair. Tell me again who won. And she thought about it and said, yeah, maybe you're right. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm right. In our third class, when we get to Avenues of Achievement, we're going to come back to the story, and I'm going to ask you how she could have done something maybe a little bit differently and actually won. Because that was a lose-lose. Child went to bed thinking, these people don't like me at all. And mom's sleeping on a lawn chair just to make a point. So one piece of advice I give everybody is don't draw lines on the ground that you don't want stepped over. Usually it doesn't work for anybody. Where were we?
Well, in case anybody missed it, number 10 was we must always look at everything through the eyes of trauma.
Through the eyes of trauma. Again, it's really easy to say things like, I know she's traumatized, but. Please don't. What we're going to be learning for the next 4 classes is how trauma changes everything. Trauma works at a subconscious level, and it actually changes our brain chemistry, how our brains work, and we do things differently. And what we've learned is that trauma makes everything different. Anyone ever in this room ever do a ropes course? How many people? Okay, why'd you do them? Team building? How many team builders? Company team building? How'd it work? Latest research says works pretty good, but in today's day and age, when we change teams so much, it starts to lose effectiveness because we have a new team next month. Was that your experience? Yeah, kind of works for a while. Anyone do like the high ropes course where you're on the zip line? Okay, interesting history behind ropes courses. They were created back in the 70s. That's when psychiatric hospitals were at their height. Okay, late 70s, early 80s. They were operating under a system called parity. Okay, remember when I said I opened a psychiatric hospital? It was back in that time. I had 250 employees, and psychiatric hospitals were growing like crazy. Denver had something like 7 psychiatric hospitals. Okay. 3 of them were charter hospitals. Charter was all over the state. You'd watch an ad on TV and it would say, if your child left his socks on the floor, get him evaluated and see if he needs to come into our hospital as oppositionally defiant. Okay? There's a diagnosis. It still exists in the DSM-4 or whatever we're using these days. And it has oppositional defiance as a diagnosis. I'm waiting to find the adolescent child that doesn't have that diagnosis. Okay, but we got a 30-day length of stay out of every kid that was oppositionally defiant or intermittent explosive disorder. Okay, so hospitals were growing all over the United States, and the reason why is because they're operating under something called parity, which meant that insurance companies had to honor them in the same way as they would do physical medicine. So you show up at the front door with an insurance card, you're in. They don't even have to get permission. You got 30 days in the hospital. And so as you can imagine, this got horribly abused in many, many ways. And as the people were admitted into these hospitals, what they discovered was revenue centers popped up, and one of the biggest one was a ropes course. Because I can take these kids and run them through a rope course, or these adults, 20 at a time, and I can bill for individual and group therapy just running them through a ropes course. So suddenly, one rec therapist with a couple of mental health workers can take a dozen adults or kids through a ropes course, and you can bill for 12 people doing therapy for 4 hours. And really, they're out there just doing this ropes course thing. Okay. Was it effective? Interesting thing about it was about 85% of the time. Ropes courses were originally designed to work with cancer victims, believe it or not, cancer survivors. So you had women in particular who had breast cancer and they were stage 3 or stage 4, which meant their chances of living 5 years was very remote. We didn't have the therapies that we have now. And so these women were legitimately facing the end of their life and they were afraid. So they'd go to these ropes courses where they'd simulate, you're in a fire and you got to climb this tower of whatever and you get to the top and the only way out is to go on the zip line. And the theory behind it is you conquer your fear of the zip line. You do something you didn't think you could do. Then you transfer that over to whatever it is that frightens you today, in this case, cancer. So I go to the top of this zip line. I don't want to do this. I want to come down. They say, we're not going to rescue you. We're not going to help you. There's no way down. You have to hook yourself up. And everyone purposely plays kind of this role of, we can't help you. We're all told not to help her. So then she has no choice. She may be up there for a while, but eventually she hooks herself onto the line. Zip line's to the other side. Big cheers, you did it. And you're supposed to be able to transfer that success into whatever you're dealing with in your normal life, whether it's cancer or whatever it is. You're able to transfer that conquering of fear over to this other experience. Did it work? Yeah, it did. About 85% of the time. The problem was between 15 and 20% of the time, it made the person on the tower worse, much worse. They melted down. We say, we can't help you because the fire, make-believe fire or whatever, is keeping us from the tower. We can't get up there. It didn't matter. They just melted down, sobbed, fetal position, refusing to hook themselves up on the line. What the heck happened here? Okay? So they started studying what is common about this 15%. You're probably guessing it. History of trauma. Okay? A history of trauma. Your basic healthy person going up there, might get afraid, might be upset, might be worried, but conquers the fear and the theory plays out well. 15%? No. Why? They have a history of trauma and they're being re-traumatized. Okay? Whatever their fear was, whatever their trauma was, nobody came to help them. And here they are on this tower. The fear that's going on inside them was like the fear that happened when, whatever it was that happened, and nobody's coming to help me again. Whether I'm a 12-year-old being raped in Europe and on an army base and nobody's coming to help me, nobody cares. That sense of being utterly alone and I'm not getting help from anybody is what I'm feeling right now, and it's just overwhelming to me, and I go into a fetal position because I don't know what else to do. So we started carrying these people down the ladder. And so the American Psychological Association was like, we can't support this anymore. The APA said we're not going to endorse this unless you screen for trauma. That became so ridiculous because what are we trying to do in a psychiatric field? You know, we're working with trauma. So it pretty much got abandoned. And all over the country, these ropes courses basically went away. And now you're sitting there with this big old ropes course back there going, what are we going to do with this? And the hospitals go, you know, it worked real well with our staff because we ran all our staff through it. Let's do it for team building. And so they started selling these to corporations and to the military. And, you know, again, it kind of worked for a while. They're still around. And whenever I ask this question, people keep raising their hand. So we know they're still doing it. But most people say what you did. Yeah, it kind of worked for that day. We all walked away feeling better about each other. But my team changed. And lo and behold, solving the problems we solve at my work isn't like getting over the fire of death, you know. So they have they're marginally successful. But the interesting thing that we learned is the effects of trauma. Trauma changes everything because when someone's been through trauma, brain chemistry has changed. And when things trigger them, they may not even know they're being triggered. Okay? They may not even know they're being triggered, and we may not even know that we're triggering them. When kids have been traumatized between 0 and 3 at the preverbal level, they're not going to be able to cognitively remember the trauma that they're dealing with, but it's there. All kids in foster care have been traumatized. If they haven't, why are we removing them? 16,000 kids we get calls on, only 400 get removed. 15,600 don't get removed. The 400 who do are the worst cases. So yes, there's trauma. And guess what? The process of removal, someone coming in and taking them out, that's traumatizing. Their new life without their house, their dog, their backyard, their school, their chest of drawers, their bed, their whole world has gone. That's traumatizing, okay? So we have to just keep in mind, there is no such thing as, I know they're traumatized, but the trauma lives with them forever. Now it goes away, and so we learn and we train, but it's never gone. We had a great kid, and we still see her. She comes and visits us. She's in college right now. Her name is Audrey. Fantastic kid, okay? Audrey went with her mom and her brothers and sisters to Target. Try on swimsuits. That seems fine. And all of a sudden, she just snapped at her mom so intensely. And mom's like, in her head, I get it. Neon lights, swimsuits, dressing rooms, body image, teenager. I get this. So she tries to stop it or soften it. And she says, you know what? I get this. We can do this in a way. We'll find a swimsuit that you like. Okay? I understand. And then she got yelled at. Not really yelled at, but just real harshly. And it's like, whoa, I'm just trying to help you. Now the foster mom's getting defensive. I know she's been traumatized, but come on. They get home, and there's this distance. They drive kind of quietly in the car. Mom is feeling hurt. I just tried to do something nice. They'd never had swimsuits before. So the daughter says to her, after about an hour of being home, can I talk to you? Do you want to know what happened? Yeah, what happened? And so she tells her a story. The story is, they lived in poverty. They lived in Mexico. And when they lived in poverty in Mexico, the children all lived in one room, okay? 4 kids, all in one room in one bed. And this girl slept on the outside of the bed because people would actually come into that place at night and take the children and rape the children. And she didn't want her brothers and sisters being raped, so she slept on the outside of the bed so they would take her. And one of the guys that did this had a belt buckle, and his belt buckle caused massive scarring on the insides of her thighs. She was embarrassed of that, and she didn't want a swimsuit because of that. She didn't even think about that. She just knew that she was angry when her mom wanted to go try on a swimsuit. Hours later, she had the self-awareness to say, I think I know why I got so mad at you. Please remember these stories when we talk about trauma, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, everyone's traumatized, I had bad things happen to me. Trauma changes everything. Try being a kid that gets outside of school and your mom doesn't show up. And so you're embarrassed. There's a lot of snow, it's cold, and you tell the school staff, my mom wants me to meet her over there. So I start walking. Mom's not over there. So you walk through the snow for hours and hours and hours. These are the kind of memories a lot of these kids have. So when we say, you know, I know you've been traumatized, but they don't often even remember the trauma. We do our summer fun games, and we're going to start doing them very soon. One of them is a three-legged race. One of them is a balloon toss. One of them was a game where we do something with spoons and eggs. We had a kid that was in line to do the three-legged race. She was like 7. And she was really excited about it. And so it was her turn. She stepped up. Our staff was putting the little strap, the little tie around her leg. She melted down, absolutely melted down. And my staff is well trained, so they saw this as a trauma reaction. Immediately cleared the area, nurturing people arrived. We aren't playing the game anymore. Stop, slow down, and let's get this off of you and just hang out with you for a while. She didn't have any memory of this, okay? There wasn't anything that she could remember. But we know at some point in her life, that leg was probably tied to something. So I just want to go overboard in expressing trauma changes everything. And when we see things through the eyes of trauma, grace is what we've got to have, because it can be so frustrating. Because what we see is so simple, it's so easy. Why is this happening? Come on, this isn't that hard. One of our parents had 3 kids that she brought on. They're almost feral. They're almost like animals. They had been neglected so much. And the youngest one was, actually it was the oldest one, that was in kindergarten. It drove this mom nuts, because she'd be outside playing on the jungle gym, and she would yell out to her, come on inside, it's time for dinner. And that girl would just turn her head, look the other direction, and tune her out. And my foster parent went nuts. This drove her nuts because she had 2 other kids. So I got to now marshal these 2 other kids and go outside and get her and bring her back. And it's like, are you kidding me? And she'd go out to her, she'd get 10 feet away, she'd call out to the kid just turned her head. Drove her crazy. And so she came into us and was talking with us saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with this kid. This kid is making me nuts with this behavior. So they were in therapy. Through therapy, what we later found out was she too was a victim of sexual assault. She's 7, okay? And while she was being sexually assaulted, she just disassociated, tuned out, went somewhere else, didn't hear, didn't see, didn't feel. Her whole body went numb, and she just let the perpetrator do whatever he wanted to do until it was over, okay? 7-year-old. When our mom would call out her name, that yelling, any yelling, triggered her. And she'd do the same thing. Turn her head, not listen, not see, not feel. Once my foster parent had that figured out, it was easy. I walk out there, I walk up to her, I get in front of her, I say, time for dinner. Boom, jumps off, runs in the house with me. It wasn't about her. She wasn't being disobedient to her. There was no reason to take this personally, because she was taking it personally. It's not about you. It's about them and what they've been through. And when we get outside of that mindset that you're disobeying me and it's making me angry, if you're getting angry, that is a very important symptom of you need to time yourself out and think to yourself, why is this getting to me? Why is this upsetting me? That mom was really taking this personally. Because I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're making me have to go out there with these two. No, she isn't. She's just having a trauma reaction to what was upsetting her, and she just tuned out. It wasn't personal. In fact, when she came out there, got in front of her and said, so let's go inside, she did it in a second. Again, trauma changes everything. Is that on there? On our list? Number 10. So we're skipping all over the place. No, we don't have number 2. We might go back and do 2. In the beginning of my book, I start with a very simple phrase, and I didn't write it. A whole bunch of people seem to think they did. I don't know how that works. You think that wouldn't happen, but a whole bunch of people take credit for this saying, and I'll give it to whoever wants it, I guess. But rules without relationship equals rebellion. Relationship without rules equals chaos. Rules and a relationship together equals a family. When our staff used to start working here, we used to take every one of them, brand new, take a big black marker and put R on their hand. And we said, when you figure this thing out, you figured it all out. Okay? This is the secret to hope and home, right here. Figure it out and come tell me. And none of our other staff were allowed to tell them what it meant. So they'd walk around with this R. And then the first one, every time, people would come and say, okay, I got it. Religion? And you're like, no. In fact, we're not really even very up on religion. Religion's not important to us. That's always kind of an interesting thing to say in a faith-based organization, isn't it? You know, we're not big on religion. Anyone know why we're not big on religion? This is a side point. Why would a faith-based, Christ-centered organization not be big on religion?
Because you're serving a population of all different religions.
That's true. We work with lots of different people in lots of different places. We're a Christ-centered religion, and guess what? Christ wasn't big on religion. He had a problem with religion, didn't he? We're not going to go off on a tangent. We could talk about this for a long time. So they'd say R for religion. We go, no. And they'd come up with a couple other R words, like no. Eventually, they'd stumble on the word relationship. And that's what our whole first class is about, relationships. Relationships are the foundation of everything. There are organizations, very good organizations, Child Welfare League of America, that will tell you the very first thing that you do when a child comes into your home is tell them the rules. Please don't. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. Okay? Your first job is to form a relationship with the kid that comes into your home. That's it. It's all I care about. Form a relationship with the child that comes into your home. Relationship, relationship, relationship. It is the most important thing. Okay? I have families that come to me and they say, I'm at the wit's end with this kid. This is a true story. I'm at my wit's end with this kid. I can't stand her anymore. She does this, she does this, she does this, she does that. Gave me this whole list of stuff that she does. And she says, we're just going to have to give our 30-day notice. I said, let me give you a suggestion. You got plans for the weekend? No? You guys told me you went to Waterworld once and you guys had the most fun, right? She says, yeah, we loved Waterworld. Why don't you go to Waterworld, stay the night, that'd be Friday, Saturday and Sunday, spend the whole night there, okay? Just you two, you and your daughter. And she's like, oh my God. Okay, just you and your daughter. Go to Waterworld, spend the entire day in Denver, do Denver stuff, do Waterworld, and then come back here on Monday. We'll set an appointment, and we'll figure out how to do your 30-day notice. Okay. So she goes to Waterworld with this girl, comes back on Monday. Actually doesn't come on Monday. Calls me on Monday and says, I don't need to. We got this thing fixed. Interesting. So the next time I saw her, I said, so what's going on? She said, I don't know. We're much better now. So does she still do this, and this? Oh, yeah. That hasn't changed. Okay? Kid's still as annoying as she used to be. You ever notice how other kids annoy you more than your kids do? You go to a restaurant and these kids are really annoying to you, don't seem to bother the parents at all. Okay, that's called being bonded. Okay? When we're bonded to people, their annoying behaviors are not as annoying. That's all that happened, is the bond between these two had gotten stretched. So that's what my recommendation was. And I didn't tell them that. You go spend a weekend together, reestablish the bond. It's not going to change these annoying behaviors. They're still going to be there. Okay? They're still going to be there. But somehow now they're not such a big deal. Okay. If you don't believe me, we're going to do an experiment. Okay? Tonight, when you guys get home, I want the husbands and the wives to do this. Before you go to bed, take 15 minutes. Write down the 10 things about your spouse that bother you the most. Make your list. Okay? 10 items. You know, you might start with things like, you know, you gained a lot of weight since you had the baby, and I think you should lose it. Your mom, what's that?
That's going to go over well.
Yeah, it's going to go over real well. Even thinking about it creates a sense of anxiety in the room, doesn't it? It's like, we're not really doing this, are we? Do not do this. Please hear me. If you do this, it's on you. Okay? It's not my fault. This was just an exercise. Do not do this. What would that be like if you did it and you did it seriously? You really wrote the 10 things that annoys you about your spouse, and you get in bed, okay? Right before you turn the lights off, you read your letter, I'll read mine, and then we'll put them under our pillow and go to bed. How's that work?
No
Give me.
loving tonight.
What's that?
No loving tonight.
No loving tonight.
So you're basically forcing things that aren't issues into being, all of a sudden there's problems that.
We're creating problems where they may not have been. We're pouring salt in the wounds, right? Do you think the other person, now here's an interesting question, hypothetically, do you think these things are surprises to the other person? Probably not. They probably agree with you that these are things they wish they could change, right? But it's absurd. And it goes back to a simple fallacy that is thousands and thousands of years old, okay? Socrates once said, to know the good is to do the good. So Socrates really believed that this was all a matter of moral choice. To know the good is to do the good, is what Socrates said. Because if we know that it's right, we do it. We only do dumb things because we don't know better. If I have a choice between buying 2 cars, they're exactly identical. Okay? They're brand new from the dealer, same warranty. Everything is exactly the same. Same customer service, everything. One's on the left side of the road, one's on the right. The one on the left side of the road is $3,000 more than the one on the right. Okay? If I know this and I'm rational, those 2 pieces of information. Economists talk about this. The economic principle of capitalism is built on the concept that there's open information and that we're rational human beings. They agree with Socrates. If I know that this is less than this and I know the value is the same, I would choose the less expensive car. To know the good is to do the good. If you chose the other car, then either you didn't know it or you're crazy. You're not rational. Socrates, to know the good is to do the good. Aristotle comes by a little while longer and says, wrong, Socrates, because you're missing a key ingredient. We're human. Humanness. Okay? When you start to understand that, and Aristotle had a word for it. He talked about moral weakness. Yes, we know what's right, but I still love cookies. Okay? If I always did what's right, this tummy wouldn't be here. Okay? If I knew what's right and only did what's right, we wouldn't smoke. Right? Half of our ills in life wouldn't happen. We'd exercise real well. We wouldn't smoke. We wouldn't drink too much. We wouldn't have affairs. We wouldn't, all the things. We wouldn't speed. We wouldn't be late. All the things that we do in life that we get mad at ourselves wouldn't happen. But that's not something that is to know the good, is to do the good, right? So when we exchange these letters in the middle of the night, what we're taking away from each other is our humanness. We're robbing each other of our humanness. Because it's because we're human. Because we're of the flesh. Because we're not perfect. Because we are who we are. As Dorothy Parker said, we are who we are with our faults that beset us, of which we could cure, but our nature won't let us. Okay? We're human. And we accept that in each other. We wouldn't be lying next to each other in bed if we didn't accept that. That's what makes us a couple. So when a child comes into our lives and suddenly they're there, and we didn't get to know them in utero, right? They just show up and they're there. They're going to have their list too. And it's just as ridiculous for us to say, those 10 things just need to change. That's as crazy as it would be exchanging the letters back and forth. Behaviors that started at birth and are there in a 10-year-old child are not going away overnight. You can't have the come to Jesus moment with this kid and say, no more, can you do this, 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 and this. Again, it's as absurd as giving it to each other, and that's important for us to understand. We're going to talk in this class about how we change, how we evolve, how we become better, but I guarantee you it doesn't happen the way that I just described. You're not going to give a letter to someone at night. You're not going to give a letter to a kid. When I have foster parents that say, I want to give my notice, and then later on they say, oh no, we got it all figured out. And I say, what happened? And they say, well, we had a sit-down meeting and he now gets it. I turn to Jess and Jan and say, find another family. Because that's going to last about what? A week? Maybe. Because the kid doesn't just get it and change all those behaviors. Okay? What does work is increasing the bond. As we increase your bond with that child and that child's bond with you, they're all there. All those problems are still there. They're still driving us nuts. But somehow it doesn't annoy us as much. When we increase the bond, that's what happens. And that's why we say the R on your hand is the most important thing that you can do. Form a relationship. We had a class like this on a Friday night. We had Jolie and her husband, and they were really young 20s. Jolie and Brian, great people. And we had a class like this, and we got a phone call towards the end of class. And DHS says, we have a girl, she is 17 years old, and she is Muslim, she speaks fluent Urdu, and she's at the principal's office at Air Academy High School. Someone needs to go pick her up, you're our last resort. So I looked at my class and went, we're the last resort. Who wants to go pick up this girl? Her name was Shay, S-H-A-Y. And I said, here's the deal, guys, okay? This is a real person sitting in the principal's office. She needs a home. And all we're asking for is till Monday, okay? Need a port in the storm. Shay needs a life, okay? She's got to go somewhere. So Brian and Jolie are like, well, we live in Briargate, so we're right around the corner. And they went and got her. Took a while. They went over there. They met with the caseworker. They picked up Shay. Here's the deal with Shay. Shay was 17 years old. She went on a double date with her friend, and two guys went to the Chapel Hills Mall to go to a movie together. And when the movie was over, both girls left the movie, and Shay was walked to her car by her date, and this other girl was walked to her car by her date. Shay's date raped her against the back of the car. Okay? Air Academy kid. She was raped, and she kept it to herself. But then her behavior started to be an issue, and finally she told her parents, and the police got involved. And her dad, because he was Pakistani, had an obligation to beat her because she was unclean. So Dad began beatings with her. And so in order to avoid the beatings, she would come home and she'd go to bed immediately. So she didn't see her dad when he got home. Then she set the alarm, because she was a really good student, at 3 o'clock in the morning. She'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and do her homework, go back to sleep, get up at 6, go to school. Well, you can imagine this doesn't last very long. It's not a healthy family. So she went and did this for a long time, or a while, excuse me. until finally her friends knew, and someone told a teacher who told a counselor who called DHS. They're mandatory reporters. So DHS shows up and says we have to pull her out of the home. Okay? So my family goes and picks her up, and they're like, we have no idea what we're getting into. 17-year-old Pakistani kid who's Muslim. Like, we have no idea what to do. And they picked her up, and she's beautiful, and she's sweet. And they take her to their home, and it's late now, and they don't know what they're doing. And so Brian bails. He's really smart. He's like, what do you like for breakfast? She goes, I don't know, I don't care. Well, what do you eat at home? Honey Nut Cheerios. Done. And so he says, I'll go get you some. So he leaves. I think he just bailed, which I thought was brilliant, actually, in retrospect. So he goes to the grocery store to get her Honey Nut Cheerios and some other things. And Mom has a time with her alone to put her to bed. Check on her. How you doing? Talk to her about hygiene and towels and girl stuff and make sure she's okay. Get her a nightgown. Get her to bed. Why was it brilliant that Brian took off? What was smart about that? What is she afraid of? Men. So got the guy out of the room. So her guard can go down a little bit, right? She's traumatized, remember? So what's triggering? Strange guy, strange house. Not knowing, is this door going to work? And, is there a lock on it? Probably not. How do I know he's not going to come in here and traumatize me too? 2 guys in a row have. My boyfriend, and now my dad. 2 people close to my world. Why wouldn't this guy be the third one to either abuse me or rape me? Okay. So Brian's gone. Mom has a chance to get her to bed, puts her to bed. Next morning, Brian, she wakes up in the morning, right there in the middle of the table, Honey Nut Cheerios. And there were a couple of other things he got. I don't remember what they were, but they're kind of nice. This story would be one that the 2 of them would tell at launches for the next year, about how their relationship was started over Honey Nut Cheerios. How she was in a time of crisis, and Brian did that. And they became like this. The 2 of them became really close. And they'd come in, and they'd run launches, and they would talk about this. When she went to school that day, she's a high school student. All her friends are like, so what happened? What was that? You're in foster care. And she's like, I was really scared. I thought there was going to be old, mean people. I don't know what old, mean people mean. I guess probably my age. She was afraid of old, mean people. She said, they're really nice. And then she tells them about how he went out at midnight and got her Honey Nut Cheerios. And the other kids are like, that's kind of amazing. My dad wouldn't do that. She's like, yeah. They became really, really close. Monday came, and they're like, no, we ain't giving her up. We love this kid. This kid's awesome. And so they learned not to serve her bacon. They learned, they learned how to work with her on issues. One time we got a phone call because Shay was under the bed and all it was sticking out was her ankles. They're like, do we have permission to pull on the ankles? It's like, no. She won't be there forever, though. I guarantee you she'll come out. She ended up being with that family all the way through graduation. Eventually, she went home to her mom. Eventually, Dad went back to Pakistan. Mom became a safe place. She went home to her parents. She had been with this family for 18 months. Both of them became very close to her. Interesting note on confidentiality comes out of this. She was the same school that my daughter went to. My daughter hung out here all the time. She babysat. She was part of the daycare group. I had to say, Kelsey, right now you can't come in because we have a kid from your school and I can't afford for that to be a mistake. I can't afford for you to actually see her and violate her confidentiality. Confidentiality is that important. Can't out her. At yearbook signing at the end of the year, Shay walks up to my daughter and says, are you Ross's daughter? And she goes, yes. She says, hi, I'm Shay. I'm in foster care at Hope and Home. She outed herself. Once that happens, then the confidentiality is appropriately broken. And the entire next year, my daughter was a cheerleader, and we'd go in and watch her cheer basketball, and Shay would sit with us the whole time. Shay graduated at the top of her class, got a full ride scholarship to Berkeley. And for a while would send us letters. And she would always, whenever she came back, she'd talk to groups of people like you guys and tell how the entire relationship was formed over a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. I tell you that story because we oftentimes think that forming relationships is really, really hard. It takes long periods of time. When someone is in a moment of crisis, relationships form very quickly. One of our staff members, Karen Rooney. It's always fun having Karen in the group when we do the things that no one else has ever done. Because she says, I crash landed into the Hudson River. She was one of the people on the airplane. Terrifying. Great story. She's writing a book about it. She got on the plane and she was really mad at her husband. Or excuse me, at that time her boyfriend. Because she's like, they went back east to meet his family, and she was sure this is when the proposal was going to happen. She's beautiful, little blonde girl, absolutely beautiful. She was sure husband-to-be was going to propose to her. Not a word. So the second they sat down on the plane, she's like, ugh. She's like, I am so done. And so she prayed. She said, God, do something. True story. Nowadays, when Karen prays, we say, Karen, please be more specific, okay? So Karen prayed, God, do something to change this guy's heart, to either ask me to marry him or set me free, okay? Because this is killing me. Within like 2 minutes, the bird strike happens. We hear the phrase, brace for landing. She said, I thought we were back at the airport until the water started filling up the bottom of the plane. And her husband, it was like, we have to get out of here. And she was up to her knees in water. Of course, the plane broke as it started to sink. And so the next thing she knows, her husband's got her out in the wing, and he goes back into the plane. So she's out on the wing, and suddenly she's terrified. What's he doing? He's helping other people out of the plane. And so she's sitting there watching this, and they got separated when they got the boats came and took them to the airports or to the hospitals, and they got separated. And she sat there in the emergency room, in the hospital room rather, and said, what a jerk am I? Just, this guy's wonderful. I need to learn some patience. Okay? This is the guy for me. I just need to learn to be patient. Thank you, God, for teaching me this. And then he is in a hospital room himself, and he says, God, what am I doing? If something had happened differently, we could have died, and we never would have been married. We just got done telling the story of how Karen, one of our workers, was on the plane that crash dived into the Hudson River. And right before I talked about that, what I was talking about is how quickly we can form relationships. It's a myth that you cannot form relationships quickly. In reality, you can. She crash landed into the Hudson River. Later on, she had a significant amount of trauma associated with it. The book she's writing, the first chapter talks about the crash landing into the Hudson. The rest of the book is about how it changed her life. And she suffered significant trauma and could not get on a plane for years after that. In fact, the next plane she was on was to go to Paris, because her husband got a trip to Paris as part of his work, and she wasn't going to miss it. But she went to the doctor and said, you're going to have to give me serious amounts of Xanax or something to get me to Paris. Now, what's interesting is she didn't even know she crash landed. So there wasn't a sense of trauma in the airplane. It was past the crash. And so what we know now is it's called post-traumatic stress syndrome that came up as a result of this. So trauma is very, very difficult, and it's very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to treat, and it comes out in lots of situations where you wouldn't expect it to. Someone who didn't even know they crash landed, you would think they wouldn't have a hard time with it, but it was there. And what I was talking about earlier, though, was how to form a relationship, and how, especially when someone's in a moment of crisis, that relationship is formed very quickly. At her wedding, they had Captain Sully deliver a message that was pre-recorded, and they've had a relationship with him ever since. They never really even met him. They never met him on the airplane. They didn't see him until later, but they knew that he saved their lives. And so there was an intense relationship there formed very, very quickly because they were in a time of trauma. All right, let's move on. Let's see what else is on our list. See how many we've knocked off.
We still have
Still haven't done number 2. We did number 3. Love to nurture parent is an authoritative parent. We did rules without relationships. We did perfect child. We're about to head into number 7.
You're not going to let me have number 2 yet.
He is not giving us the satisfaction of number 2.
We did number 10. Trauma changes everything. One of the things that you were going to talk about later in some of our classes, and you may have already done this in some of your core classes, is we have the psychologist Maslow who talks about Maslow's hierarchy. You've all heard of this, okay? We have different things that drive us. In fact, there's a very good book out there right now. It's called Drive. And one of the things the author talks about in the beginning of the book is we know there are intrinsic drives. What are intrinsic drives? Things that are internal to us. What are our intrinsic drives? We need food. We need water, right? We need to eat. We have sex. If we don't have sex, we don't recreate the world, right? These are sex drive, food drive, maternal drives. We have those internal drives. What does the business world create for us as external drives? Money. Carrot, sticks, right? Things that encourage us, things that punish us. The carrot and stick mentality. Those are internal and external drives. What Maslow did was he came in and he messed around with the way that traditional people, or how traditional psychologists viewed our drives. And what he looked at was, yes, there are the sex drive, the drive to eat food, those kinds of things. And yes, there are external drives, pain and pleasure. But there's other drives. Maslow shows us that we have this pyramid, and he talked about this hierarchy. And at the very bottom of the hierarchy, our basic needs have to get met. After our basic needs are met, then other needs get met. And we move all the way up till we get to the highest on the pyramid, and that is self-actualization. We can't work on self-actualization when we're hungry. We don't even work on hungry when we're not safe. Okay? The bottom of the pyramid is basic safety. Okay? Safety is physical safety and emotional safety. So emotional safety is the foundation of everything. If you do not feel emotionally safe, nothing else matters. Do you think Shay felt emotionally safe when she arrived? No. She'd been multiply violated. Do you think the kids that come into your home are going to feel emotionally safe? Probably not. So your job in the beginning is not to establish rules, it's to form a relationship and above all, create the sense of emotional safety. I cannot emphasize enough that emotional safety is the most important thing. If kids don't feel emotionally and physically safe, nothing else happens. And what we know about physical, emotional, ethical, all the forms of development, they are inhibited without the sense of emotional safety. Kids who don't feel emotionally safe, kids who don't feel physically safe, don't develop in other ways. Failure to thrive is a result of not feeling emotionally and physically safe. Okay? Kids who don't develop emotionally well, don't develop physically well. We see physical manifestations of not feeling emotionally and physically safe. So unless a child feels emotionally and physically safe, they oftentimes don't even grow. They have a failure to thrive. And that comes out of a sense of not being connected. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of a relationship. Relationship, relationship, relationship. Nothing is more important than you forming a primary relationship with the child in your home, because that relationship is the key to emotional safety. Without emotional safety, forget it. You're not going to rule through rules. You're not going to have a household where there's no connection, but the kid just follows your rules. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. It won't work. So you must be willing to form an emotional attachment and relationship with every kid that comes into your home, and that relationship is going to be the foundation of their emotional safety. It's as simple as that. And I'm going to tell you a very, very important rule. Never, ever, ever sacrifice that relationship on the false altar of accountability. I think that's in there, isn't it? What number is that? Number 8. We did 2 and 8 together. Never, ever, ever sacrifice your relationship on the false altar of accountability. In the United States, we have raised the concept of accountability to the highest level, and we treat it almost like it's one of the commandments. You must be accountable. Accountability comes second. Right after I finished my book, I was on a tour. I did both a TV tour and a radio tour all over the United States. It was kind of fun. I was on the radio in Kansas City. And I was on the radio in Kansas City. I was doing a talk show, and I was telling a whole group about a really neat thing that happened between my daughter and I. My youngest daughter, who's 25 right now. And my youngest daughter, Kelsey, she had a sleep disorder, and she was doing very, very poorly in school. It was an undiagnosed sleep disorder. By the middle of her sophomore year, she had a 0.5. Nothing point, just 0.5. She was failing in everything. And we had her diagnosed, and at Children's Hospital, she had delayed sleep phase syndrome. And what that meant was she couldn't go to bed before midnight. She couldn't wake up before 8 or 9. Okay? Waking her up at 5 to be at the bus stop at 6:07 or whatever it was impossible. It's like waking us up at 3 in the morning and expecting us to function. She had delayed sleep phase syndrome. And thanks to the doctors at Children, we were able to come up with a treatment plan, and suddenly her grades skyrocketed. She graduated fine. She went off to college at Fort Lewis, and she ended up graduating with, I think, a 3.5 and spent a year in Europe. Very high-functioning kid, very bright kid, but she was failing because she had a sleep disorder, and she was operating on no sleep for a year and a half. So that was her condition. So I drove her to school every morning because she just kept missing the bus. Obviously, she'd miss the bus. We'd wake her up. She tells the story of actually falling asleep in the shower one time. We didn't even know this. Out cold in the shower trying to get ready for school. She had such a sleep disorder that it was virtually impossible for her to make the bus. She missed it all the time. After missing it a couple of times, like, Kels, let's not do this. I'll drive you every day. And I loved it. It was great. Not only did I get my butt out of bed early in the morning, but I got 20 to 30 minutes of uninterrupted daddy-daughter time when she was a high school student. And it was priceless, because that's a tough time for dads and daughters, moms and daughters. It's a hard time to connect, but guess what? We're stuck in the car every single day for 30 minutes. We talk about everything. Talk about everything. And to this day, we're extremely close. In fact, I'm flying out to see her tomorrow. She's in Los Angeles now. She's an artist. And I'm going to go out and spend time with her, and she's having her first art opening. So we're really, really close, and I owe it to a large degree because of that opportunity to be in that situation with her. And so as I'm telling this story, the host of the radio show gets all confused and disturbed. It's like, ugh, this is not going well for him. He's not feeling comfortable with this. So he's like, well, but aren't you rescuing her when you do that? I said, oh yeah, absolutely. Isn't that great? I'm rescuing her. That's what dads do. We rescue kids. And then he gets really confused because in his world, the word rescuing, isn't this interesting? Isn't the word rescuing a bad word? Firefighters rescue people from fires. Police rescue people from being robbed. Where did the word rescue suddenly become a bad word in the English language? Yes, I'm rescuing my child. So he gets confused. He says, but you're enabling her. I said, absolutely. I'm enabling her to finish high school and do well, get there on time. I'm enabling because that's what I want to do. And again, the word enabling has been turned into a bad word. That somehow we're doing something bad. She's manipulating you by having this disease, and you're kind of making it worse by feeding into it. So I said to him, so let me help you with this. What you're basically saying is, aren't I rewarding bad behavior, and isn't it going to make things worse? Right? Isn't that what you're saying? He goes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I said, do you believe it? Do you seriously believe that to be true? Now he's getting kind of confused because he's picking up on the fact that I'm smarter than he is. And we're in front of like thousands of people, so he's getting real quiet. I said, do you really think that's true? So do you think that she's going to get dependent on me driving to school and she's manipulating me to do this? So I'm going to bet you that some point in time comes where she lets me down easy. She says, Dad, you know I love you, right? And you know how much I love it when you drive me to school, drop me off in front of all my friends. But I have my driver's license now, and would you be okay if we just did that one day a week maybe? Don't you think that's going to happen? Sure. She doesn't want her dad driving her to school every day. That becomes dorky after a while. It meets a need for a season. It's the crutch that we need. Again, isn't this interesting? The word crutch is a bad word. The word enable is a bad word. The word rescue is a bad word. Let's think about the word crutch. I had surgery on my knee. I couldn't use it. I needed a crutch. The crutch served a purpose for a while, but guess what? It hurt my arm. It looked stupid. It was no fun. And when I didn't need it anymore, I got rid of it. Isn't that what a crutch is for? So this guy is getting very uncomfortable because he's seeing where we're going. So when you're teaching a child to write and you put your hand over their hand and help them write, you think they're manipulating you to do that, and they're going to want you to do that forever? This is ridiculous. Of course not. The time will come when she's ready to do it on her own, and she will push away from me like every child does to every parent. Of course I rescued her. Let's go to 2 Samuel. The Lord reached down and pulled me out of deep waters. He rescued me because, why does he do it? Because he delights in me. There's two parts to this message. Part one is he rescues me, because that's what our fathers do. That's what dads do. We rescue our kids, and our kids remember it. And I did it because I delight in her. Everybody needs one person that delights in you. Everybody needs one person that no matter how bad it gets, they still think you're the one, right? Psychologists say that we all need one person that 100% sold out to us. They can't see us anything but great. We just delight them. They can't imagine anything but us being great. Even when we fail, we're great. We need that. Sometimes it's a coach. Hopefully it's a parent. And in our situation, oftentimes it's you, the foster parent. You have to have that. And that's why I say, don't ever sacrifice that on the accountability altar. Because accountability will come. It gets there. And you know what? What if it doesn't? It's not the biggest deal in the world. It's okay if accountability doesn't show up. There are a lot of unaccountable people. But you know what? If they know they're loved, they're going to be healthy, unaccountable people. If they don't know they're loved, they're not going to be. There are a lot of people out there right now. They have a lot of fame, a lot of fortune. They're super sexy. They have all the boys or girls that they want, and they put the bullet through their head. Freddie Prinze did that. There are a lot of people that commit suicide because, yeah, I'm rich, I'm famous, I have all these things, but down deep inside I'm empty. Because I didn't have that. I didn't have that when I was young. The sense that somebody thought I was awesome. Okay? Love is not enough, but without love, nothing else is. Think about that. Love isn't enough, but without love, nothing else ever is. We have all kinds of stories. You probably know someone that fits this story. An immigrant family, perhaps, that came over to the United States. They had nothing. Okay? But the kids really knew they were loved. And they're fine. And yet we have all these people who are famous and rich and have all this stuff, and their lives are a nightmare of drugs and alcohol and abuse. Why? Because they didn't have that sense. So for us, giving our kids the sense of unconditional positive regard, fancy word for love, that they know that somebody cares about me more than anybody else, and you can't shake that person. They are sold out to me. That is absolutely critical for every kid that we have. And that's what I was giving my daughter. Yep, I'm one person that no matter what your grades are, I don't care. She was benched as a cheerleader. She's the one I told you as a cheerleader. She was benched because of academic performance. And so what did her teacher make her do? Her coach? She made her come to the games. We would sit outside in freezing cold weather in her uniform, humiliated because she couldn't cheer, and she had to come anyway and sit there benched. And in solidarity, I sat right next to her every single game, 12 games in a row. Because I wanted her to know that I was proud of her, I loved her, no matter what. That sense of unconditional love is what our Father gives us. It's what we need to give to our kids. So I quoted 2 Samuel and walked them through it. So that's a lot more important than teaching accountability. And guess what? I know the end of the story. She became accountable. But that's not what she needed during that period of time. During that period of time, what she needed is someone to be unconditionally sold out to her and say, I just love you so much. And she got out of the car one time. She was walking back to the school. We parked about 20 yards up in front of the school. And I got out of the car and on top of my lungs, I yelled, remember to celebrate the wonder that is you today. Right then the principal came out, gave me a high five. He knew that she was flunking everything she was taking, but he's like, that's exactly right. Celebrate the wonder that is you. You need to have someone in your life that is always celebrating the wonder that's you. And here's the thing, who cares if she doesn't become accountable? Who cares? She will. She did. Like I said, she got 3.5 in college. She's doing very well. So here's your next assignment if you don't believe me. I want you to think about, well, I'm not going to make you do this, but imagine this, okay? Your wife calls you on the phone. She went to work. And she says, honey, I left my lunch at home. So could you either bring it to me or better yet, why don't you come and take me to lunch? And you say, well, this is a natural consequence because you're always so forgetful. So you don't get lunch today. Okay? You don't get lunch. I'm going to go to lunch and I'm going to enjoy my lunch. But you don't get lunch because this will teach you a lesson. You'll appreciate this. Down the road, you will thank me for this. We actually say these words. It's so funny to say them out loud, but we say these things to our kids. They call us up at school. They say, I forgot my lunch. And we say, that's too bad. It's a natural consequence. I'm going to lunch, but I'm not getting lunch for you because this is how you'll learn. What do you think the kid learns? And keep in mind, this is really important. History is in the mind of the historian. Okay? When everyone in this room is gone, when we're all dead and buried, our kids are our historians. And they'll tell the story any way they choose. Okay? They're going to tell the story any way they choose. I doubt they're going to tell the story like this. I forgot my lunch. It's not a big deal because I'm kind of chubby anyway. I had plenty of nutrients. I don't need that much food. It's probably good for me actually not to have that meal. And I called my dad, and thankfully, he cares so much about me. He told me he wasn't going to do anything about it, and I didn't get lunch. And that would help me be better and more accountable as an adult, and I am today, so I thank him. Do you think that's what goes in the history books? No. You know why? Because I talk to people, and I hear what they say. Pardon my language, here's what they say. My dad's an asshole. That's what they say. He'll leave work early to go get a drink with friends. He'll leave work in the middle of the day to go pick up his car. He'll leave work for a lot of reasons, but not for me. So I guess he likes Johnny Walker better, and I guess he likes his Ford better. I come in third because he won't leave work for me. That's how they remember it. That's not how we want to be remembered. How's your wife going to act when you tell her that? Is she going to say, thank you, now I'm a better person? I don't think so. So let's keep in mind, what are the consequences of our actions? And again, what are we trying to get done? There's time. There's plenty of time. Life will teach our children as many consequences as we want them to. Our kids are going to face a lot of consequences in life. They're going to deal with them. Our job is not to teach them consequences. Yeah, some maybe. But first and foremost, we want them to know we are 100% sold out to them. I had a class, a great class, and there was a mom in the class, a very young lady, and she had gone to Eagleview High School, or Eagleview Middle School. Actually, my daughters went to Eagleview, so she knew some of these stories, or some of the people in these stories. And she told me a story of her and her friends doing a dance at Eagle View Middle School. And they had developed this little dance that they were going to do, this dance routine. All three of these girls, they had very special outfits. Their moms had made them, and they're going to do this dance. And their dad had played the guitar for them over and over and over again in the living room, over and over and over again. And they had practiced it hundreds of times. Dad couldn't come to the actual talent show because he worked at Fort Carson. He couldn't get the time off. But they made a recording of his guitar playing so that she could do this dance with her friends in these costumes in front of a sold-out auditorium, Eagle View Middle School, as their part of the talent show. She said the night before the talent show, she and her friends had a blowout. She says it was the stupidest blowout in the world. It's what teenage girls do. We're all mad at each other. And it's one of those things where 3 days later we're perfectly fine. But it happened to happen then. As a result of happening then, we were at the point where we weren't going to do it. And I was so upset because neither one of them were going to come and do the dance with me. She said, so I decided I was going to do it anyway. And so I went to the school. I had my outfit on. She says, I was fighting back tears. I was embarrassed. I was nervous. And I was standing up on the stage, and the music was about to start when I suddenly saw this figure in the background. And it's my dad. He's got his guitar, and he's holding it above the crowd, and he's walking through the crowd. She said he gets to the audience, through the audience, he gets up there on stage, he plays the song, and I dance to it. And she says, I remember that moment forever, because I never felt so loved. He died of a brain tumor 3 months later. She says, but that was so powerful. That's how I remember him. Okay? That is what we want to be remembered for. That's a great historian, telling a great story and about how she feels loved, and to this day, she feels special. That's what we want to accomplish. That's why I spend this entire first class talking about relationship, because that's the secret. That's it. If you take nothing out of this entire class, form a relationship with your kid, you're going to be fine. I have foster parents that come in here who are great at relationships, and I don't care how tough a kid we have, they do great. I have families that come in here, they're terrible at relationships, and they need rules. They don't do so good. That same school, Eagle View. Have you guys ever done the back to school night? It's kind of fun. You go back to school with the kids, you learn about stuff. And the one I went to at Eagle View, you get your kids' schedule and you follow and you go through all the classes that they go through, sit in their desks. And over there they have teams, gold team, purple team. And so you rotate with the same group of people. This is important. So I'm sitting in a classroom and all the people around me I kind of recognize. Go to the next one. We're all the same people. The math teacher comes out, okay? And he's kind of a jerk. And he now is the love and logic teacher at my church. So I'm not telling you his name. He teaches this class of math, and he gets to the front of the class, and we spend, I think it's 7 minutes in each class. 5 of those 7 minutes, maybe 6. Here are the rules. You violate this rule, you violate that rule. Here's what happens. You go to the principal, you get a referral, you get this, you get that, you get that. The whole thing is about rules. I didn't learn anything about math. We get done. We go to the next one. Keep in mind, same people, okay? And same people means same kids, right? So we get to the next one, and there's Mr. Thurston. The kids call him Thirsty. Long hair, kind of a hippie, behind his desk, Grateful Dead flag, right? And so he's talking, and he's a physics teacher. And he's so excited about physics. He is so excited about physics, unbelievable. He's talking about fleet-footed Sturmdorms that you pump up like this, and they shoot across the room, and they show you how kinetic energy is converted into real energy, okay? He's got all these catapults and all these things that he does. He says physics is so exciting. He talks for 5 minutes about physics, 6 minutes about physics. Now we're into the point where the bell rings, and we're all like, he says, you have any questions? Yeah. What about rules? Oh, we don't have any rules here. Well, like when the kids do things bad. Kids don't do anything bad. He says, I don't know, if a kid, I don't know, if a kid did something bad, I guess I'd talk to him about it or something. I don't know. Interesting. Same kids, right? Same kids, same teachers. Different teachers, same kid. Why does one person need tons of rules? The other one doesn't need them. Ah, it's because these guys are science. No, they're both STEM teachers. Science, technology, engineering, math. One's a math teacher, one's a science teacher. I've been there. Math, physics, they're both as boring as it can be, right? Or could be. So there's no edge there. What is it? So about 3 months into class, I decided to test. I was like, Kels, people get in trouble in that math teacher's class? Oh yeah, yeah. There's always somebody being sent to the principals. How about in Thurston's class? Oh, no, never. How come? Why don't you guys get in trouble in Mr. Thurston's class? And she looked at me legitimately and said, why would we? Why? We like him. Why would we do something to get him mad at us? What did they have? She had a relationship with him. What didn't they have with the math teacher? A relationship. He had tons of rules, and that's how he's going to run things. So now he's at my church. He teaches love and logic, which is love and logic. How much? This much love, this much logic. Who else done love and logic or knows about it? Okay, I've been through the stuff. We both say exactly the same thing at the beginning, don't we? Rules and relationship. You can have both. Problem is, in love and logic, you get this much relationship. Now we're going to spend a lot of time talking about rules. What you're going to learn in this class is, if you spend a lot of time on relationship, you need about this much time for rules. Kids will self-police themselves. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. Relationship without rules is chaos. You got to have both. But we start with the relationship. If we have a strong relationship, you're not going to need a lot of rules. You don't have a strong relationship, you're going to need all the rules, and you're going to be using them all the time. Okay, how do we form relationships? We have a couple of rules. What's that?
Get Honey Cheerios.
Honey Nut Cheerios, that helps. I'll tell you a big secret. Food's a great way to start relationships. I'm Native American, I'm Indian, and I'm the main Indian consultant to El Paso County, and actually CDHS. And they said, Ross, what do we do when we bring Indian families in and there's this big giant gap between us? I said, feed them. And they're like, no, seriously, what do we do? Feed them. I'm not kidding. So they brought in a family that came right off the reservation, Navajo Indian family. Everyone was really mad. Very, very high charged case. The mom, who wasn't Indian, no, she was Indian. Mom, who was Indian, was in Iraq. Dad was in charge of the kid. Severely abused this kid. And then he reported on Fort Carson that the babysitter kidnapped the kid. He tried to blame it on the babysitter. Made front page of all the news. This is about 10 years ago. Because there was no babysitter and there was no kidnapping. It was him trying to figure out what to do with this severely abused kid that needed to see the doctor because he had totally neglected this kid, didn't take care of him. So when DHS got involved, this guy got arrested, and the family showed up, and they were from a different culture, and they were very angry, and there was no communication, and they panicked. So DHS called me up and said, Ross, we have an Indian family here, and this is getting really ugly. What should we do? Feed them. And so what we did was, I said, cancel your meeting, because it was a very intense meeting. I said, come over to Hope and Home. I had $200 worth of food here. I had tacos and taco meat and everything. Totally different meeting. They came in. We extended that to them. We showed respect to them. They ate. And we all sat around and talked about this case. And DHS was in shock. Somehow the process of eating food, breaking bread, eating together, serving each other, and having conversations broke all the tension. And then we were able to get to a very serious issue. Kids come into your home, feed them. A lot of times these kids are emotionally bankrupt and they're starving. And they need food. You know what else happens? They sleep. They sleep a lot. Don't be surprised the kids sleep 17, 18 hours after arriving at your house. That's what stress does. They might not eat anything, nothing. And then they might eat enormous amounts, but be ready for both. They might not be able to sleep at all, and then they might sleep for hours. So just anticipate both are possible. And so when a child first comes in your home, don't have a lot of plans like, we all have to be up at 8 tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning's a good day to take off. Don't worry about getting them to school the next day. We'll get them to school, but let's make sure that everybody's emotional needs get fed first. And when we feed those emotional needs, sometimes we feed the other needs, okay? All right, let's talk about some basic rules on how to form relationships other than food and sleep. We have some rules. First rule is really simple. Anyone ever go see an investment counselor? Yeah. What do investment counselors tell you? Even if you haven't, what do investment counselors tell us? Diversify. That's a very fancy thing they tell us. What do they tell us first? Save! Come on. You should be able to everyone, let's together, right? 1, 2, 3. Save. Okay, half the crowd. 1, 2, 3. Save. Thank you. We know this. This is not hard. The first thing investment counselors tell you is save some dang money. Okay? Don't spend everything that you've got. Now, do they tell you just wait and then save wait until you can save a bunch? Or do they tell you small amounts over time? Small amounts over time, right? We need to make investments small amounts over time. We need to make deposits before we take withdrawals. What happens if you take money out of an account that doesn't have any? You overdraw it. Okay? You get penalties for overdrawing it. If you overdraw it enough, they shut it down. If you're overdrawn in life to a massive degree, you're bankrupt. Rule number 3, don't bankrupt children. Bankrupt children, just like bankrupt people, are dangerous. Make small investments over time, right? Don't bankrupt people. Bankrupt people are dangerous. Make a deposit before you take a withdrawal. 3 pretty simple concepts, right? Always make a deposit before you take a withdrawal. Make small investments over time. Don't bankrupt people. One of my favorite kids is a kid named Chris. I'm still in touch with him. Great kid. His mom had this theory. When you did things wrong, I took things away from you. The more things you did wrong, the more I took away from you. And these are the people that are involved in a really terrible book out there called Creative Correction. How we can do all these mean things to kids and kind of make fun of them at the same time. It's like one of the worst books that's ever been written. So it's not only punish kids, but do it in a way that lets you laugh at them and feel really clever. We can put signs on them. We can make them go to school in diapers. We can do things that are creative that make our punishments kind of funny. Believe me, kids don't find this funny. So what they did with Chris was they took everything away. Then it got to the point where, we took away the door. We're so creative. We're going to take the door off its hinges. You'll have to earn it back. And we're going to take everything out of your room. You got to start from zero and earn it back. We bankrupted him. Bankrupt people are dangerous. They have nothing left to lose. So what did Chris do? He pooped in the heating system. Pooped in the register. A lot. So bad that it was considered toxic. Toxic waste. They live in a fourplex. The entire fourplex had to be evacuated, and they had to bring in people that do this. I don't know what it's even called, some sort of sanitation group. Cost them about $3,000, and the whole fourplex had to be evacuated. Yeah, who had the last laugh there? Why did he do it? Because he felt powerless. Because he had control over nothing. We took everything away from him. He didn't see any way out. So when you have nothing, all you can do is spoil something for someone else. Think about the team that has nothing to gain because they don't have any chance to make it to the playoffs. They're just playing to spoil other people. And they're playing light and loose, and they have nothing to lose, and so they're very dangerous. Always make small investments over time. Make deposits before you take withdrawals. And watch out for bankrupt people. Bankrupt people are dangerous. Kids coming in your house are close to bankrupt. Okay? Okay, let's talk about how we make let's talk about how we make a deposit before we take a withdrawal. We're of course not talking about real money. The currency of the realm in this situation is love. right? We're making love deposits. Psychologists call this a narcissistic bank account. Okay, we're feeding that narcissistic bank account. We're trying to get them to have some self-esteem. I like that phrase better. It's a self-esteem piggy bank. We need to feed it. What's a withdrawal? What would be a withdrawal from your self-esteem piggy bank? Consequence. Anything at all that causes you to have a decrease in your self-esteem. Anything that taxes your self-esteem is a withdrawal to your self-esteem piggy bank. Okay? Anything at all that pulls from that account is a withdrawal. So what are the things that tax a teenager's self-esteem? I'll give you a simple answer. Everything taxes a self-esteem of a teenager. Being seen with you taxes their self-esteem. I'm not kidding. What taxes their self-esteem? Well, let's go down the list. Open a Glamour magazine. The entire magazine taxes their self-esteem. About once a year, every magazine like that of that type will run an article. Okay, I kid you not. About once a year, they'll run an article at least on women's self-esteem, and they'll talk about how women have eating disorders because of magazines like theirs. Okay, they'll have an article that talks about it, and in that exact same article will be photoshopped, retouched pictures of women. And they'll run the article about it anyway. It's amazing. So you want to talk about self-esteem? Open any Glamour magazine, because guess what? You don't look like that girl. You ever see the Dove article on that? The Dove transformation article? You guys have seen, no, none of you have seen, you've seen it? Yeah, where they take a pretty but average looking girl, and they sit her down, they take pictures of it. And then they start retouching the photograph. And the amount, and all the stuff that they do before they put it up on a billboard is phenomenal. Okay, it is unbelievable. Because she's a pretty girl to begin with, but the retouching, the making her skinny, making her hair perfect, making her skin blemishes. I mean, the retouching is phenomenal. So try being a teenage girl and looking at that. No one looks like that. Okay, these are people that a friend of mine used to be a photographer. You know what the number one tool that they used before Photoshop? Duct tape. Duct tape. You take a model who's skinny anyway, and before you take a picture of her, you take duct tape on her back, and you pull her skin together on the back with duct tape so it stretches the skin on the belly tight, because we don't have Photoshop. You're talking about skinny girls already, and we use duct tape to pull breasts up higher, hips this way, sides this way. It's insane. So imagine what it's like being a teenage girl looking at these magazines. You don't look like them, your clothes aren't like them, your hair's not like them, your teeth's not like them. You're reading about the scholastic wonders. I just saw it the other day. Colorado Springs finest, right? It's just in the Gazette. You know, the 50 greatest kids in Colorado Springs. They're all beautiful. They all are valedictorians. They're all going off to be phenomenal. What's it like to be a kid and see that stuff day after day after day? What's it like to be my kids in foster care and see that stuff? Life takes a toll every single day. We forget that. We have an exercise that we do with foster parents sometimes. We say, write down the 5 things that you do when you're stressed out to kind of lower your stress. And people write things like, I go for a drive, I go for a walk, I go to Starbucks, I call my sister. What are the 5 things we do? And pretty much the 5 things that we do are not available to kids in high school. They can't do any of them. So what do they do to de-stress? And again, imagine what it's like for my kids, who probably are 2 to 3 grades behind. Not just in grades, but in social skills. They don't have any ability to communicate with these kids. I love Jericho Java, and I love this job. I love Hope and Home, because when you guys come for support groups, I have a trained person, Bree. She's a youth worker, and she sits out there with the kids, and she helps them connect in Jericho Java, because they don't know how to do it. They don't have the social skills. They don't have the academic skills. So imagine what their stress levels are like every single day. We go to work, yeah, we get evaluated, yeah, we get once a year an evaluation typically. These guys get a grade for every class, and there's 7 of them a day. All day long they're taking self-esteem hits. So we have to have that in our mind. They are constantly being taxed. So it's up to us to try and make some deposits so they can withstand those withdrawals. Now when I say make a deposit before you take a withdrawal, I mean it both in the moment, but I also mean it from a grand perspective, okay? In the moment, yes, it's better to give a deposit before you take a withdrawal. But also, monitor that self-esteem account. If it's getting hit all the time, do something. Go do something positive with that kid and help them survive. That's our job. Always make a deposit before you take a withdrawal. Now don't make stupid deposits. Don't make disingenuous deposits, okay? But for guys in particular, my advice is say the things that you think. We think things all the time, we just don't say them. How often do we sit there and look at our wife and she's not even looking at us, she doesn't even know. And we sit there and we go, God, is she beautiful? How lucky am I? I'm this like regular old schmuck and she's with me. We think that all the time, girls, we do. We just don't say it. Seems dorky. We know that we'll say it wrong, so we don't say it. But we think stuff like that all the time. Say it. Make the positives, because kids and people need it. And if you don't learn anything at all from tonight's class, it'll change your life if you always make a deposit before you take a withdrawal and mean it. If you say something hokey, it doesn't work. You look beautiful today. Will you make me a sandwich? That doesn't work, okay? But if we make a legitimate deposit before we take a withdrawal, it matters. Okay, let's use an example, okay? We'll go back to my daughter Kelsey. We'll tell a real story. All right. I come home from work. I'm tired. I'm irritated. I'm exhausted. I open the door, and my entire living room has been destroyed by one child, okay? Her backpack, which is only this big, seems to have exploded across the entire room. Her favorite thing is to get cereal in the morning or after school, and so she's got a cereal bowl balanced precariously on the couch in such a way that it's just dripping one drop every couple of seconds of milk. It's going to go in the back of the couch. And you know how when you have a kid, they're a baby, and you lose the bottle? You were sure there was a bottle, now there's no bottle. And like a month later, you find it has gone like down under the seat and dripped into the carpet of the car, and it will never smell the same again. Okay, that's what's happening. It's drip, drip, drip of the cereal. And what amazes me is a teenager can let this happen, right? They don't notice. There's stuff is everywhere, mud and stuff on the boots. The boots are up on the couch, right? And it's not a leather couch, it's like a cloth couch, so it's soaking up the mud along with the dripping milk. You've got porn on the TV, and you're like, what? Well, not porn, but you've got Britney Spears on the TV, okay? And during the time my kids were growing up, that was the one that you watched on MTV. So we got MTV and we got porn. Do you know the one where Britney Spears, I swear she's naked. But maybe she's not. But she looks like she's naked on the TV. That's what I walked into. By the way, for those of you who don't know, that's what MTV used to be like. I think it's gone. Is it gone now?
No.
Is there still MTV? Doesn't do music anymore, yeah. By the way, I told my kids that reality TV shows were BS. You know, there is no such thing as a reality show. They don't walk around just, like on MTV, listening to you, just miking you up for a year. Those people are all scripted, and I told her that. And one thing that's really funny about things like that is God comes back and gets you. My daughter, I mentioned she had the sleep disorder, right? When she got better, she decided that she really wanted to tell the world what a sleep disorder was, and so she told me she was going to do a TV show on it. When your 16-year-old tells you they're going to do a TV show on something, you think that's nice. So I was in my office about 6 months later, and the receptionist comes back and says, Ross, MTV's on the phone? I'm like, what? She said, MTV's on the phone, they want to talk to you. And so a guy named Ben is on the phone. I pick up the phone. There's a guy named Ben. He says, yeah, we're from MTV. We're going to be at your house this weekend. We just want to make final arrangements. I'm like, Ben from MTV, my house? What are you talking about? He said, I've been working with Kelsey to do this TV show that we're going to do called True Life, I Can't Sleep. And we're coming out to your house to film it. And I'm like, whoa. well, you know, what do you mean? And he tells me, it's like, you understand you're working with a 16-year-old, right? She said, yeah, we kind of forgot that. I said, yeah, well, we need to talk about it. So after about an hour, that's what happened. They came out that weekend, and I was entirely wrong. They mic'd up my whole family. They followed us around for 1 week every 4 months for a year and a half. So if you're ever bored and you want to see my family in action, find MTV I Can't Sleep, and that's Kelsey. But that's what I learned was this is an amazingly creative kid, but all that was being stifled because we were seeing it through a different lens, right? All right, so I walk in the room. There she is. We got MTV, porn on the TV. We got the cereal dripping into the couch. We got mud on the couch. A backpack that's unbelievable. It's like an IED. Somehow it's exploded. I'm not kidding. It's this big, but it is everywhere, right? If you parents, you know what I'm talking about. It is everywhere. And there's no way that you can imagine that stuff going back into that backpack. But still, and I'm kind of pissed, to be absolutely honest. I walk in there, I'm tired. And you know, my house is a disaster, and we know she's not going to clean it, right? She's not even going to put her dishes in the dishwasher, so I lose it. I'm like, God, Kelsey, I can't believe this room looks like this. This is ridiculous. You know you're not supposed to watch this stuff on the TV. I've talked to you about that 100 times. You tell me you're not watching. Now you're watching it. The cereal's seeping into the couch. That's not fixable. Okay, that's going to smell. And you got mud all over the stuff here. Do you care nothing about our house? Do you care nothing? And she looks at me and says, you don't care about me. What? You walk in the house, your day's shitty, but what about my day? What the hell? You know, and she gets up, she stomps down the hallway, slams the door. It's like, oh, we're off to the races. This is going to be a great evening. Anyone ever had that experience? Yeah, it's easy, right? So here's what our goal is, okay? It's not easy, but we'll try. Close the door, step back, take a breath. Okay, I can have that outcome. We know it, we played it, we've done it 100 times. Let's do something different. We're gonna walk in the door. Oh, Kels, I gotta tell you, I'm so happy to see you. True. I've had a really crappy day. True. And you are a sight for sore eyes. I'm looking forward to us spending some time together tonight. I need to recharge my batteries. True. And this room is a destructo mess. You got porn on the TV, you got the cereal seeping into the couch, and that's mud that I know you're not going to pick up. What do you think the difference is?
You made a deposit.
Yeah. Night and day though, isn't it? I still vented the same things. I'm still upset. But I controlled myself. Okay, what we're going to learn about our classes, our parenting classes, first person we got to gain control over, us. And it's not easy. Because when we're mad, because when we're tired, when our self-esteem needs a deposit, it's really hard. But that's when we got to come through. Because you know what? I just saved myself the whole rest of the evening. I could have had a really crappy evening, but I just rescued myself. How long does it take to make a deposit? Doesn't take that much time. Okay, how are we doing for time? Let's see here. We're doing good. I need some volunteers. I need 3 women. And this is like everyone starts looking down. I need Brienne, and she needs to come up here. And I need, let's see, yeah, might as well, her roommate there. Jolie, you can come up here. And Michelle, come on up. Come on down. Now, the really cool thing about volunteering at this point in the game is you'll be done.
Awesome.
And you'll be done in about 5 minutes, and then all the rest of these guys have the next 3 classes to volunteer. All right, meet Hope and Home's latest 3 employees, okay? These are Hope and Home employees. They're unbelievably hardworking people, okay? They work in my office, and we are working on a grant, okay? Why don't you guys all come over this way so the TV, we're going to put you on TV. There we go. These are super hardworking people. We're working on a grant. And unfortunately, we waited till too late to get this thing started. It was, you know, it's due tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at DHS. It's a long document. We're not sure how we want to do it. We're not sure if we want to put summary at the end, traditional style, or executive summary at the beginning. And there's some industry words in there. We don't even know how to spell them, and they're not in spell check, okay, because they're industry words. We're not sure how to spell these. But we start working on these things, and we realize this is too little too late. There's no way we're going to get this done, okay? It's due tomorrow morning at 8. It was a good idea, but we're not going to get it done. So I give up. Now I need a piece of paper. Let's see, or a notebook. Who's got, yeah, there, if I can borrow your notebook. Thank you. So, I'm deflated. I'm bummed. Guys, it's too late. It's too little to do. I mean, it's too much to do. We got going too late. I'm going home. Let's go to bed. Bye, guys. I leave. I'm gone.
Bye, Ross.
Bye.
Bye, Ross.
Now, these guys, they're super employees, okay? Unknown to me, they say, you know what? He's right. This probably is 12 hours out. But it's exactly 12 hours between now and 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. If we stay up all night, we can do this. So these guys are superheroes. They work 12 hours in a row. They finished the grant, and it's amazing. Okay? So I come back in the morning, and I am shocked to see these guys here. What are you guys doing here so early? You look like you're exhausted. What's the deal?
We finished it.
You finished what?
We finished the grant. The whole
It's
thing.
impossible.
It's done.
We went home last night.
We didn't. You did.
You guys stayed up all night long and did this?
All night.
Let me see.
Finished. Bags under the eyes.
Let me see this.
Coffee breath.
Are these words spelled right? I don't think they're spelled right. And didn't we say we're going to put the summary? Wait a minute. Didn't we say we're going to put the summary at the beginning and not the end? Yes. It doesn't look right because we were going to check these words and we were going to put the summary at the beginning.
I'm going home.
How does that feel? Now keep in mind, this is of course a simulation. This isn't real. But didn't it feel like kind of crappy, even though?
It made my heart stop.
You started to interrupt and I interrupted you, right? I mean, just for a brief moment there, didn't it feel kind of real? Mm-hmm. And what did it feel like?
Deflating.
Do you want to work for this guy? You worked all night long, and that's all I saw, right? You did something that you thought was really good, and what were you expecting?
Right, you did a great job.
Yeah, and what did you get?
Thank
Now
you so
you're going to do it again?
No.
No, never again. Okay, let's go back in time. Let's try that again. I'm going to try it again. What are you guys doing here?
We finished it.
What?
The whole thing.
But
Grant
we left last night. This would have taken hours.
It didn't. We brewed a cup of coffee.
Seriously?
About 10 of them.
Oh my God, you guys are amazing. This is phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you. We did it for you.
Wow. What did we decide to do with the spelling of those words? Because I don't remember. And where did you put the summary? Okay, I'm asking the same question, right?
We
How,
looked them up.
how did that feel that time?
I literally stood up taller.
I asked the same questions. It's how I asked them, right? Who has a watch that actually can count time? I know these days we have things that look like this, that don't look right. Okay, who has one that has a second hand on it? You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Penny is going to be our timer, okay?
Yeah, we have stopwatches.
I'm not up to that yet. I'm still in the era where I want to watch. We're going to let Penny time us, okay? I say, we're going to do it again. We're going to go back in time. They just told me that they did this. On your mark, get set, go. That is amazing. You guys are fantastic. I am in shock. I thought this project was doomed. You guys, I can't say enough. That was amazing. How long did that take?
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
11.56.
11.56. What's the number one reason that people tell me why they can't make a deposit before they take a withdrawal? They don't have enough time. I'm dead serious. I don't have enough time. Penny's 10 seconds. You're 11 and a half. Okay? 1.6. What was it? 10 seconds, guys. That's no excuse. What's the difference to you guys?
Night and day.
Night and day. Meaning what?
Meaning that I felt so defeated with the first one, and I feel like I would I mean, I could probably go and work all day today.
Yep, and don't even need to get sleep because I felt praised and someone gave me that reward, right? In the first case, even though we're joking and it was a simulation, it still felt crappy. That shows you how powerful negativity can be, and being kind of yelled at or talked down to or degraded. It makes us just want to quit. And you know what? I just ruined 3 employees. If your best resources are your people, you do that once, I don't care how great you are the rest of the time. What happens if I'm great tomorrow? Doesn't matter, right? Because I don't trust it, because that could come out at any time, right? I don't trust it. All right, let's give these guys a big hand. Thank you.
You guys are next.
Okay, what have we learned? Okay, we learned that the difference of 10 seconds is the difference of an employee that's been ruined. If you're lucky, they quit. Because if they don't quit, then they're miserable. Then they're miserable for a long time. And you can't fix that. You can't fix that kind of intensity. Even just then, as a simulation, it still felt crappy, didn't it? Even though we knew we were acting. That kind of intensity scares kids. And you can't fix it. Now, you can over time. I mean, I'm not telling you that you make one mistake, it's doomed forever. What I'm telling you, though, is when we make those kind of mistakes, they're very, very difficult to fix. Because they're like, yeah, which one's real? The person that yells at me? Or the person that said they were sorry for yelling at me? Is that yelling person going to come back again? Again, we can take withdrawals, but we make deposits first. A 10-second deposit changes everything. Okay? Okay, is that on our list? No.
You touched on the rescuing children is, but you never actually gave us the answer.
What do you guys think it is? It's what parents do. All right, we have about 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine that you have a job. And that job, what's a job that you would use a ladder for? I don't want to use fireman. I want to use something else. What? Painter. You're a painter, okay? And you climb up a ladder and you paint. And you're at the top of this ladder. You're doing everything right. Suddenly the ladder breaks and you fall to the ground and you get pretty bruised up. They take you to the hospital. They say possible concussion. They write you a letter. They say you can't go back to the workplace for a week. Okay? That hurt. And it was scary. You go back to the workplace in a week. They said, yeah, the ladder was kind of messed up. We fixed it. We glued it. We strapped it back together. Same ladder, but we fixed it. You get up to the top of the ladder, breaks again. This time more serious. You sprain your ankle. You dislocate your shoulder, definite concussion. They send you to the hospital. You get a note. You come back, work a couple weeks later. This time, guess what? We got rid of that ladder. We got you a new ladder. Won't happen, okay? Well, you go up to that ladder. It's the same ladder, same kind of ladder, wood, brackets. You test it, right? If you're smart, you look for cracks in it, right? You stretch it. You step on it. You kind of jump on it. You check your weight on it. You might even ask other people to climb it. Okay, it seems fine. You get up to the top of it, you're working, boom, something happens to the ladder, it crashes. And now you're really hurt. You got broken bones, okay? You go to the hospital. They give you a note, and they tell you for a couple weeks, you're going to have to stay away from work. Come back again. Okay, now, good news. We got you a steel ladder. Nothing can happen to this ladder. We guarantee it's going to be fine. And we show you other people on the ladder. We tell you stories about the ladder. The ladder's worked for all these years with all these people. We show you pictures of how great this ladder is. It's going to be fine. You get up to the top of the ladder, something goes wrong, the ladder breaks, you hit the ground again. This time, not only do you have broken bones, you have internal injuries. You're out for months. Okay, you come back.
At what point are you suing the company?
At what point what?
At what point are you suing the company?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Or, at what point do you what? Find another job? Maybe I just shouldn't have ladders in my life, right? I'm just clearly not the ladder type. Can I paint the stuff around the bottom? I'm done with ladders. I don't want to be on a ladder. But this one's fiberglass. It's new and improved. And it's got a label on it. It's from Hope and Home. Hope and Home has great ladders. Everyone knows Hope and Home's ladders are great, or Stanley or something like that. This ladder's guaranteed. What are you going to do? I'm going to check that ladder out. I'm going to bang it against the wall. I'm going to jump up and down on it. I'm going to twist it. I am not going to buy it. And when I'm on it, I'm probably not going to do much painting because I'm going to be looking at the ladder the whole time thinking you're going to crash on me, right? I don't trust it. Am I having fun? No. Because my sense of security hasn't been met. Remember we talked about emotional security? I don't feel safe on this ladder. Would you? Okay. In foster care, replace the word ladder with the word mother. Maybe I just shouldn't have a mother. Maybe I'm one of the kids that doesn't do well with mothers. In Jules' case, the girl that just recently got adopted at Open Home, 21 ladders. 21 moms. Don't you think after 21 you're like, I shouldn't climb ladders. I'm clearly something wrong with me that I just attract ladders that break. If you're that kid, aren't you going to test that mother? Aren't you going to be kind of crappy to that mother because you don't trust her? Okay? You're the ladder. And that kid has a reason not to trust you because every single other ladder's let her down. Every other ladder's hurt her. She doesn't trust ladders, and that means she doesn't trust you. And yeah, she's going to say really crappy things to you because she's going to find out if you break before she starts climbing up. You heard Brogan tell the story, right? Those of you who were at the launch? You know, he says, I went into foster care at 6 or 7, and people just kept throwing me back. By the time I got to Lewis's house, I don't want to be adopted because I don't trust it. That's the ladder. Why would I climb on the ladder when every other one has collapsed on me? I'd rather just not do it. That's their version of not getting on the ladder. Jules had 21. She met Scott. She met the Woods. Amazing people. And what I love about the Woods, you probably saw them on our Facebook page with the superhero, the child that's wearing superhero stuff, Scott and Kim Woods. When they got married, they had some options. They said, we were told, we could have traditional vows or we could have, non-traditional vows. They thought till death do us part seemed kind of stupid. They're not like that. They're kind of common folk. He runs a bar. They didn't want to do something fancy like that. They wanted something that was more like them. They like the phrase, what was their phrase?
Beer runs out.
What?
Till the beer runs out.
Till the beer runs out. No, their phrase was no matter what. And they liked it so much, that was their wedding vow. And after they got married, they both got no matter what tattooed on their back. No matter what. And they said, because if one of us ever turns our back on the other, we want to see the words, no matter what. It reminds us that we have to go after that person. After 21 failed ladders, Jules got adopted by the Woods. They fell in love with her and she fell in love with them. And she had her adoption day and she had her tattoo day, one day after being adopted. The day after she got adopted, she got the words, no matter what, tattooed on her back. Because she wanted somebody that would say, no matter what. While she was getting adopted, she found out she was pregnant with her true love of her life, a young boy who they don't think is the best person for her. So they're having all kinds of struggles right now because she wants to leave the family and go off and live with this young man. That's what teenage girls do. But they can't ever, ever, ever let her go because they have tattooed on all 3 of their backs the words, no matter what. That means more to Jules than anything in the world. She can get mad at them, she can call them names, but she gets to be a regular old teenager who can walk away from her parents frustrated, but they still come after her, no matter what. Think it's fun being the ladder? Give Kim a call.
Yeah,
Right now, it's not much fun. What's the shortest verse in the Bible?
Jesus wept.
You ever think about this phrase? Jesus wept. 2 words. I'm a person who actually believes that the Bible is literal. I think the Bible was written very thoughtfully and very carefully and is inspired and ordained by God. I really believe that. So I think when it says Jesus wept, it means something. It doesn't say Jesus got teary-eyed. It doesn't say Jesus, cried a little bit. Think about the word wept. It's a very powerful word. I can tell you I've wept once or twice in my life. I remember when my mother died of cancer, I wept. Uncontrollable sobbing where I could not stop. You know that weeping where you start gasping for air? It's kind of scary. That's weeping. That's wept. That's what they say Jesus did. Why? It's an interesting question. He's the master of the universe. He has every power. He can stop anything or start anything. I remember one time I backed up over my kid's tricycle. She got a brand new bike. It was actually a bike with training wheels. It was her birthday present. It had streamers on it. We had all these pictures of her going down the street and all the kids running after her. She was so proud and happy about that bike. And then why? Why do kids just get drawn to park the bike under the left rear tire? But that's where somehow it made sense to park it. I backed up over it, right? She's sobbing. She's so upset. I do what dads do, right? I grabbed the bike and I threw it in the trunk and I got her in the car and we drove to Walmart and I went inside and we found the exact same bike and we picked out the exact same bell and the exact same streamers and we got all that stuff. We took out the car and we couldn't put in the car. Why? Because I put the other bike in the trunk for some really stupid reason. It made sense in the moment. It was like I'll take it to the hospital. But when I got there, it's really a true story. I got there, it's like, oh, what are we going to do? I can't throw that one in the garbage right now, right? So somehow I convinced her I was giving it to them and they were going to fix it for, they're going to nurse it back to health. I figured I'd buy myself some time. So I put her bike in the car, we went home, we got the wrenches out, we put it all back together and it's fixed, okay? Let's think about it. Jesus can fix this situation. Why was he weeping? What was wrong? Lazarus was dead. Jesus was on his way. Mary is mad. Multiple occasions we see where Mary says, Jesus, hurry up, come on. And it doesn't use the word dilly-dally. That's not in the Bible, but it kind of implies it. It says Jesus took his time. He could have gone faster, but he purposely doesn't get there on time. And people are saying, if he'd gotten here on time, this wouldn't have happened. And so Mary's upset. And she's upset, and she confronts Jesus on this and says, if he'd gotten here on time. And so she's upset. Lazarus is dead, and Jesus weeps. Now, what's interesting is he's not weeping because of Lazarus. He's weeping because she's so upset. He feels her pain. And when he weeps, the very next phrase is, they knew he cared. This is a very big chapter, and it's very powerful. In my mind, it replicates the entire New Testament in a single, very short verse. Our Father in heaven comes down to earth and takes human form so he can feel our pain. He weeps and he sobs because he feels what we know to be the human condition. And when he does that, we know he cares for us. We know he cares because he sobs. Think about it. Same thing with our kids. What happens when they get all F's? We go, oh, that's all right. What's that say? We don't care, right? I had a kid that once said that the turning point was she ran away. And she knew she'd be in trouble and she didn't care. And she came home and her mom was mad. Didn't bother her at all. She found her foster dad spent the entire night out with a flashlight looking for her. That upset her. One of the people in my room, my class, said, I was always treating my mom crappy. I'd come home from late work and she'd yell at me. I didn't care. One night I came down the steps after she yelled at me and I saw her at the kitchen table sobbing. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? Why are you crying? She says, I was just so scared for you. She says, I was never late again. Okay? When we show that we're upset, when we show that we're frightened, when we show our emotions, when we're upset, because you can do better in school than all F's. This is when the kids know that we actually care. And there's a transformative moment in every single foster parent's story. Every foster parent tells me this story. Anyone ride horses? I hate them, but I used to ride them a little bit. And there's a moment when you're on top of it and it's going like this, and it's like the worst experience in your life. It's doing this thing and your butt is like this. Then all of a sudden it goes into a gallop and you understand why people ride horses. That transition from when it's so rough to all of a sudden it's so smooth. That's a moment that all parents talk about. All of a sudden there's a transformation where all of a sudden we felt right. And they all attribute to one moment. It's usually a magical moment where that kid felt like we have a relationship. Because in the beginning, it's a contract, okay? And they know it's a contract. You're taking care of them because you have to. That's in the rules. It's volume 7. And I can go get my GAL and she can get you in trouble because you're violating my contract. And all of a sudden there becomes a point in time where they realize that you're not in it for the money. It's not about a contract. It's about a relationship. You think about our two big books, right? The Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is a contract, right? It's about rules. The New Testament's about a relationship. When we make that transition from having a contract with these kids to having a relationship, all of a sudden we go from this canter into a gallop. Anyone ever see the movie The General's Daughter? Hideous movie. If you aren't ready for it, don't watch it. I see it's a John Travolta movie. I think this will be fun. Saturday Night Live, right? No, it's one of the most hideous movies I've ever watched. It's the story of a general, and the general's daughter has been murdered. And John Travolta shows up as the investigator, and his job is to figure out who murdered the general's daughter. She's not only murdered, she was staked out, she was naked, she was raped, and she was murdered. So it's a really high intensity movie. At the beginning of the movie he says, I'll find out who murdered her. At the end of the movie he comes back to him and says, I figured out who murdered your daughter. You did. And the general's like, what do you mean? Well, the general's daughter was the first generation of kids going to West Point, women going to West Point. And it was a goal that both he had and his daughter had. Okay? And in order to punish her for this, other recruits, men, on a night that they had overnight exercises, a group of men actually did that. They tied her down and they raped her. And the next morning, the general comes in there, finds his daughter badly beaten and raped as a symbol to him to stop having women in the military. And that was something he and his daughter believed in strongly. So he tells his daughter, we'll never catch these guys anyway. So let's just hush this whole thing up. So they don't win. We're going to win. So it never happened. We're not going to let anybody know about it. We're going to make it all a big secret. She survives that. She survives being beaten. She survives being raped. But months later, she basically commits suicide with the help of some other people, reenacting this same environment. And she gets involved with some sadomasochistic people, and she ends up being re-beaten, re-raped, and this time she dies. And John Travolta's trying to figure this thing out. And the key to him is she survived the rape. So he's always asking himself a simple question: what's worse than rape? Because that's what killed her. What drove her to do what she did? What's worse than rape? He's trying to figure it out through the whole movie. And he finally figures it out. What was it? Father what? She was not worthy of her father's love. That's what it was. Because in that very moment, that guy needed to be different. In that very moment, he needed to take his general stripes off and be a dad. In that moment, he needed to say things like, I'm going to find these guys and kill them. I don't care what it means. He needed to be passionate. He needed to be a dad, and he didn't do it. And she carried the shame of that for her whole life, which was very short, because she couldn't stand the fact that she wasn't worthy of her father's love. Do you think kids like that come into foster care? Don't feel worthy? A lot of them feel that somehow they caused that they were removed. It's our job to fill that gap. So going back to what I said at the beginning of the class, creating emotional safety. We do it through relationships. We need to create relationships with emotionally damaged kids who have been traumatized. And we do it by making small deposits over time, by always making a deposit before we take a withdrawal, and by being very careful not to bankrupt people. Remember the girl that went to Target? Her brother had to sit and watch those kids be treated the way they were. Her brother couldn't rescue them, and he carried that shame. And so after he was rescued, he couldn't be around people. He grew his hair down below his eyes, he flunked all his classes, and he sat at home. And the parents let him do that. He withdrew to his bedroom and he played video games for a year. And people in his church group taunted the dad. I can't believe you're letting him get away with that. I know he's traumatized, but this kid needed a year of making deposits before even one withdrawal could be taken. He needed a year of letting him just sit in his room. And his dad said, I'd go in and clean it up every once in a while. We'd serve food in there. We'd let him be in that room for a year. And that's what he needed. And he played these multiplayer game things. You ever heard of these?
Morps.
What?
Morps.
Okay,
Massive online role-playing games.
Yep. What was great about that? He had friends all over the world, and he could get his head chopped off, or he could get eaten by a lion, or killed by a dinosaur, but he couldn't be hurt by real people anymore. It was safe, emotionally safe. It took a year of making deposits to him, and the parents needed our support because people were taunting them. I can't believe you're letting him get away with that. Really? Let's go back to the guy in Kansas City. Is that letting someone get away with something? No, it's a season of taking care of him, of rescuing him, of enabling him, so that eventually he could have relationships. Someone at a school did something really smart. He came home from school one day and said, I'd like to be a cheerleader. I'm like, seriously? You want to be a cheerleader? What? He said, well, they did a car wash. And someone gave him the sign. It's called parallel process. No way is he up to being able to play with other kids. But you can go out on the street with the sign that says, car wash over here. And they told him, you did it better than anyone ever did, and we had more cars than anyone. Is that making a deposit? Yeah. And you know what he said? I want to be part of that group. I want to wear the t-shirts. I want to go do that again. And he came out of his shell a year later. Okay, what's the message? Over and over and over again. Trauma changes everything. Relationships cure everything. The secret is making kids feel whole, and we do that by creating emotional safety first. There's a lot more things we're going to learn. We've got 3 more classes, but the first message is relationship, relationship, relationship. And there's nothing more important than that. Never sacrifice that relationship, especially when it's young and we're just starting out with it. Nurture that relationship above everything else. Everything else will come along. We're done. Thank you guys for being online. You just watched Love to Nurture Part 1. We'll see you guys next week.
We're missing some stuff.
Oh, we're missing stuff. We're missing number 11.
Well,
All right.
Who is the latter? It should be we are.
11, 12. You guys know 11.
So we are.
Who's the latter?
Foster parents?
The mom.
Okay, that's
In my story, who was the latter?
what is the job of your story?
What is the job of the latter? What do you think it is? To be what?
Safe.
Strong, stable, and to carry the weight. And it ain't not an easy job, guys. And believe it or not, no matter what, is 10 times stronger than I love you. I love yous are cheap. No matter what is hard.